Under a blood-red moon, Alpha Heir Cale Thornridge drags his claws across Saren Vale's wrist and severs their fated bond in front of the entire pack. "You are unworthy," he snarls, leaving the powerless Omega to die alone in the wilderness. But rejection doesn't kill Saren. It awakens something the packs tried to erase from history. When Kael discovers what she's become, he returns not as a lover, but as a hunter. Because Saren isn't just surviving anymore. She's rewriting the rules of their world, one shattered alpha at a time. Stay until the end to see how she makes him kneel. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments below. The bonfire crackled like broken bones. Saren Vale stood at the edge of the ceremonial circle, her bare feet sinking into cold dirt, her fingers twisted together so tight the knuckles had gone white. Around her, the Thornridge pack gathered in a mass of fur and flesh and expectation, their eyes gleaming amber in the firelight. The air reeked of pine smoke and something sharper. Anticipation, maybe. Or blood. She could feel their stares crawling over her skin like insects. "Move forward, Omega." The voice belonged to Elder Miriam, a woman whose face looked like it had been carved from stone and left out in the rain for a century. She stood beside the fire, one gnarled hand raised, beckoning Saren closer with the kind of impatience reserved for things that didn't matter. Saren's legs didn't want to work. She forced them anyway, one foot in front of the other, each step feeling like she was walking toward the edge of a cliff. The crowd parted reluctantly, shoulders brushing against her, whispers hissing in her wake. Look at her. No wolf. 22 years old and still nothing. Pathetic. The words weren't new. She'd heard them her entire life, muttered behind hands and spat at her feet. Wolfless, broken. Omega trash. In a world where your wolf defined your worth, Saren had none. No shift, no power, no voice that could carry across the pack link and demand respect. Just a girl. A useless, fragile, human-shaped thing in a world built for predators. She reached the center of the circle and stopped. The heat from the bonfire licked at her left side, but it didn't touch the ice spreading through her chest. Elder Miriam's eyes swept over her like she was cataloging livestock. Kneel. Saren knelt. The dirt bit into her knees. She kept her head down, staring at the ground, at the small rocks and dead leaves scattered around the fire pit. If she looked up, she'd see them all watching, judging, waiting for her to fail at something she'd never even had a chance to succeed at. "Tonight," Elder Miriam announced, her voice carrying over the crowd like a whip crack, "we honor the moon's will. Tonight, the bond reveals itself." The pack murmured in agreement, a low rumble of approval that vibrated through Serene's bones. Fated mates. It was the one thing the moon goddess supposedly got right, pairing wolves with their perfect match, their other half, the one soul designed to complete them. And tonight was the claiming ceremony, where unmated wolves would find out if fate had chosen someone for them. Saren had been forced to attend, not because anyone thought she had a mate, but because refusing would have been worse. "Step forward, Cale Thornridge." The crowd shifted and Saren's stomach dropped through the earth. She didn't need to look up to know who was moving toward the fire. She could feel him, the weight of his presence, the way the air seemed to thicken and hum when he got close. Cale Thornridge, the Alpha's only son, heir to the pack, a wolf so powerful that grown men flinched when he walked past, and he was standing right in front of her. Saren forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Don't look up. Don't move. Don't look at me. His voice was low, rough, edged with something that might have been curiosity or contempt. She couldn't tell. Saren lifted her head slowly, her gaze crawling up past black boots, past long legs encased in dark jeans, past a chest that looked like it had been carved from granite, until finally, she met his eyes. They were storm gray, cold, sharp enough to cut. Cale Thornridge was beautiful, the way a blade was beautiful, all clean lines and deadly edges, with black hair that fell just past his jaw and a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. He stood at least 6'4", his frame packed with muscle that moved like liquid under his skin. And when he looked at her, Serene felt something inside her chest lurch sideways. A pull. Faint, like a thread tugging at her ribs. No, that wasn't possible. Elder Miriam, Kael said, still staring at Seren. What is this? The old woman stepped forward, her expression smug. The moon has spoken, Alpha Heir. She stands before you. Kale's jaw tightened. This is a mistake. The bond does not make mistakes. She doesn't even have a wolf. And yet the mark appears. Seren's wrist burned. She gasped and looked down, her breath catching in her throat. There, just below her palm, a mark was forming, twisting lines of silver that glowed faintly in the firelight, curling around her wrist like a brand. The mating mark. The undeniable proof that the moon goddess had chosen. No, Kael said flatly. The world seemed to stop. Seren looked up at him, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Kael was staring at the mark on her wrist with an expression she couldn't read. Disgust, maybe, or fury, or something colder. No? Elder Miriam repeated, her voice sharp. You would reject the moon's will? Kael's eyes slid to Seren's face. Look at her. She's nothing. No wolf, no strength, no use to this pack. She can't fight, can't hunt, can't even shift. What the hell am I supposed to do with that? The words hit like fists. Seren felt her throat close up, felt the tears burning behind her eyes, but she shoved them down. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of all of them. The bond is sacred, Elder Miriam said slowly, like she was explaining something to a child. You cannot simply watch me. Kael raised his right hand and his claws slid free, long, black, curved like scythes. The crowd went silent. Even the fire seemed to quiet, the flames flickering uncertainly. Seren's breath stopped. Kael, Elder Miriam warned, if you do this, I, Kael Thornridge, heir to the Thornridge pack, Kael said, his voice carrying across the circle like a death sentence, reject you, Seren Vale, as my mate. He moved, fast. Before Seren could react, before she could scream or pull away or do anything, Kael grabbed her wrist, the one with the glowing mark, and dragged his claws across it in one brutal stroke. Pain exploded through her arm. She screamed. The sound ripped out of her throat, raw and broken, as fire poured through her veins. The mark didn't just fade. It burned. It felt like someone had taken a hot iron and pressed it into her skin, like every nerve in her body was being shredded and set on fire all at once. Kael let go and stepped back, his face blank. Seren collapsed forward, clutching her wrist to her chest, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Blood dripped between her fingers, dark and thick, and the mark, the beautiful silver mark, was gone. In its place was a ragged, burned scar, black at the edges, still smoking. You are unworthy, Kael said quietly. The crowd didn't move, didn't speak. They just stared, their faces a mix of shock and pity and something that looked almost like satisfaction. Elder Miriam opened her mouth, then closed it again. For once, she had nothing to say. Kael turned and walked away. Just like that. Like Seren was nothing, like she'd never existed. The bond shattered. Seren felt it break inside her chest, felt something vital snap and collapse and go cold. Her wolf, the one she'd never had, the one she'd spent her whole life waiting for, screamed in a voice she couldn't hear. Or maybe that was just her. She couldn't tell anymore. The world tilted. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't hold her. She slumped forward instead, her forehead pressing into the dirt, her lungs heaving, her entire body shaking so hard her teeth rattled. Around her the pack began to move again. Whispers started up, low and vicious. Did you see that? He rejected her. Of course he did. Look at her. Waste of the moon's time. Feet shuffled past, shoulders bumped her. Someone stepped on her hand, and she didn't even have the strength to pull it back. Eventually the crowd dispersed. The fire burned down to embers, and Seren was left alone in the dirt, bleeding and broken, with nothing but the echo of Kael's words ringing in her ears. You are unworthy. She didn't know how long she stayed there, hours maybe, or minutes. Time didn't work right anymore. Everything felt distant and muffled, like she was underwater, like the world had wrapped itself in cotton and shoved her to the bottom. Eventually someone grabbed her arm. Get up. Seren blinked. Her vision swam. She turned her head and saw a woman standing over her, tall, muscular, with short blonde hair and a scar running down her left cheek. Lyra, one of the pack's enforcers. Not cruel exactly, but not kind either. I said get up, Lyra repeated, hauling Saren to her feet with one hand. Seren's legs buckled, but Lyra held her upright, her grip like iron. You can't stay here, Lyra said, her voice flat. Alpha's orders. You're out. Out? Seren's voice cracked. It didn't even sound like hers. Exiled. Effective immediately. Lyra's eyes flicked to the scar on Serene's wrist, then away. You've got until dawn to leave pack territory. After that, if anyone sees you, they've got permission to treat you as a rogue. The words didn't make sense at first. Then they did, and Seren felt something inside her crack open. She swallowed hard. I don't have anywhere to go. Lyra shrugged. Not my problem. She let go, and Seren stumbled, barely catching herself before she hit the ground again. Lyra was already walking away, her boots crunching on gravel. Wait! Lyra didn't stop. Please. Nothing. Seren stood there swaying, her wrist throbbing, her chest hollow. The pack house loomed in the distance, warm light spilling from the windows, smoke curling from the chimneys. Home. Or what used to be home. Now it was just a building. She turned and walked in the opposite direction. Her feet carried her through the familiar paths of the territory, past the training grounds, past the communal gardens, past the small cabin she'd shared with 3 other low-ranking wolves who'd never spoken to her unless they had to. She didn't stop to grab anything, didn't have anything worth grabbing, just kept walking. The forest opened up in front of her, dark and vast and endless. The trees stretched toward the sky like skeletal fingers, their branches bare and twisted. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. The wind picked up, cold and sharp, cutting through her thin dress like knives. Seren stepped into the trees. Behind her, the lights of the pack house flickered once, then disappeared. She didn't look back. The forest swallowed her whole. For the first 3 days, Seren barely moved. She found a hollow at the base of a massive oak tree and curled up inside it, shivering, her arms wrapped around her knees. The scar on her wrist pulsed with a dull, steady ache that never quite went away, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kael's face. You are unworthy. She should have died. Probably would have if it hadn't been for the stream. She'd stumbled across it on the 4th day, half delirious from thirst, and drank until her stomach cramped. The water was ice cold and tasted faintly of minerals, but it kept her alive. Food was harder. She tried eating berries, but half of them made her sick. She found some wild mushrooms and spent an entire night vomiting behind a tree, her body racked with cramps. Eventually, she learned to recognize the edible plants, dandelion greens, clover, the occasional tuber she could dig up with her bare hands. It wasn't enough. Her body started to hollow out. Her ribs showed through her skin. Her dress hung off her like a sack. She could feel herself fading, piece by piece, like she was being erased from existence. And maybe that was fine. Maybe that was what she deserved. But on the 7th night, something changed. Seren was lying in her hollow, half asleep, when she felt it. A pulse. Faint, like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. It rippled through her chest and spread outward, warm and strange and alive. She sat up, gasping. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. No wind, no animals, no rustling leaves, just silence. And then, rage. It slammed into her like a freight train, hot and vicious and overwhelming. Not her rage, someone else's. She could feel it pouring through her veins, feel the snarl building in a throat that wasn't hers, feel claws digging into earth she wasn't standing on. Seren clutched her head, gasping. What is this? The rage spiked. She screamed. And then, just as suddenly, it stopped. Seren collapsed back against the tree, her chest heaving, sweat pouring down her face. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was racing, but the rage was gone. No, not gone. Muted. She could still feel it, faint and distant, like an echo. But it wasn't hers. It was someone else's. Something else's. A wolf. Somewhere out in the forest, a wolf was fighting, bleeding, dying, and Seren could feel every second of it. She didn't understand. She didn't have a wolf. She'd never had a wolf. So why? The pulse came again, stronger this time. Seren gasped and pressed her hand to her chest, and for just a moment she felt something shift inside her. Something old, something buried, something waking up. The first time Seren calmed a feral wolf, she thought she was hallucinating. It happened 2 weeks after the rejection. She'd been foraging near the stream when she heard the growling, low and wet and wrong. She froze, her heart leaping into her throat, and turned to see a massive gray wolf stumbling out of the underbrush. It was hurt. Blood matted its fur. One of its eyes was swollen shut. Its lips were pulled back in a snarl, foam dripping from its jaws. And when it saw Seren, it lunged. She didn't think. She just raised her hand. Stop. The word came out soft, barely a whisper. The wolf stopped mid-leap. It hung there for a second, suspended in the air like gravity had forgotten how to work, and then it crashed to the ground and went still. Not dead, just still. Its chest rose and fell, slow and steady, and the snarl faded from its face. Seren stared. The wolf stared back, and then slowly it lowered its head and whined. Seren's hand was still raised. She could feel something flowing out of her, warm and invisible, like a current of air she couldn't see. It wrapped around the wolf, sinking into its fur, its skin, its mind. She was inside its head. She could feel its pain, its fear, its confusion, could feel the infection burning through its bloodstream, the agony of broken ribs, the terror of being lost and alone. And she could soothe it. Without thinking, Seren stepped forward and knelt beside the wolf. It didn't move, didn't growl, just watched her with its one good eye, its breathing ragged. She placed her hand on its head. The connection deepened. She felt the wolf's heartbeat sync with hers, felt its pain ease, felt the wild, frantic energy inside it settle into something calmer, quieter. The infection was still there, but the wolf wasn't fighting it anymore. It was resting, healing. Seren pulled her hand back, and the wolf's eyes slid closed. It slept. She sat there for a long time, staring at her hand, at the faint silver glow that faded from her fingertips. "What the hell am I?" she whispered. The forest didn't answer, but deep inside her chest, something pulsed again, stronger. Mum. Word spread faster than fire. Seren didn't know how. She'd been careful, staying deep in the wilderness, avoiding pack territory, keeping to herself. But somehow, the rumors found her anyway. A wolfless omega who could calm feral beasts. A girl who walked through the forest and bent predators to her will. A ghost. A myth. A veilborn. That last word came from an old rogue she'd stumbled across near the northern ridge. He'd been sitting by a campfire, roasting a rabbit, and when Seren appeared out of the trees, he'd nearly jumped out of his skin. "Easy," Seren said, raising her hands. The rogue stared at her, his eyes wide. He was old, maybe 60, maybe older, with a face like cracked leather and scars crisscrossing his arms. "You," he breathed. "You're the one they're talking about." "I don't know what you mean." "The girl, the Omega, the one who—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "You're Veilborn." Seren frowned. "What's that?" The rogue laughed, sharp and bitter. "Course you don't know. They buried it, erased it, pretended it never existed." He gestured for her to sit. "You hungry?" She was always hungry. Seren sat. The rogue tore off a piece of rabbit and handed it to her. She ate it in 3 bites, barely tasting it. He watched her with an expression she couldn't read. "Veilborn," he said slowly, "are wolves, or not quite wolves, who can touch the veil. The space between instinct and consciousness. The place where a wolf's rage lives, where dominance comes from, where the bond forms." He paused. "Most wolves can feel it, alphas can command it, but Veilborn, they can reshape it." Seren stopped chewing. "You can reach into another wolf's mind," the rogue continued, "and change what they feel, calm their rage, amplify their fear, bend their will. It's not mind control, not exactly. It's deeper, more fundamental. You're not telling them what to do. You're changing who they are." The rabbit turned to ash in Seren's mouth. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Is it?" The rogue gestured at her. "How many ferals have you calmed? How many predators have knelt at your feet?" Seren didn't answer. The packs feared Veilborn, the rogue said quietly, because you can't dominate something that controls dominance itself. So they hunted them, killed them, wiped them out, one by one, until there were none left. He leaned forward, or so they thought. Seren's wrist throbbed, the scar, the rejection mark. He knew, she said softly. The rogue tilted his head. Who? Kael. He knew what I was. That's why he rejected me. The rogue's expression darkened. Smart bastard. Probably figured if he broke you early, you'd never awaken, never become a threat. He spat into the fire. Guess he was wrong. Seren looked down at her hands. They were shaking. What do I do? She whispered. The rogue didn't answer for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was grim. You run, or you fight. There's no middle ground for someone like you. I don't want to fight. Then you'll die. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and final. Serene stood. Thank you. For the food. The rogue nodded. Be careful, girl. The packs don't forgive what they fear. Seren walked back into the forest. Behind her, the fire crackled and popped, and the rogue's voice drifted after her, quiet as smoke. And they fear you most of all. Kael found her 3 months later. Seren was standing in the ruins of an old stone structure, some kind of watchtower maybe, or a shrine. It was half collapsed, covered in moss and vines, but the walls still stood, and the roof kept out most of the rain. She'd made it her home. It wasn't much. A bedroll she'd scavenged from an abandoned camp. A fire pit she'd dug herself. A small pile of dried meat and foraged plants. But it was hers. And she was stronger now. Not physically, though she'd stopped losing weight at least, but in other ways. She could feel the veil now, could sense it humming beneath the surface of everything. It was like learning a new language, one she'd always known but never spoken. She practiced. On animals at first, deer, rabbits, birds, learning to touch their instincts without breaking them, to guide without controlling. Then on wolves, rogues mostly, the ones who wandered too close to her territory, looking for prey or shelter. She didn't hurt them, just reached out, calmed them, sent them on their way. But every time she did it, the power grew stronger, and so did the hunger. Seren was kneeling by the fire, stirring a pot of stew, when she felt him. A presence. Heavy. Familiar. Wrong. She stood slowly, her hand drifting to the knife at her belt. A crude thing she'd made from a sharpened stone and a stick, but it was better than nothing. Hello, Seren. The voice came from the shadows. Kael stepped into the firelight. He looked the same, tall, broad-shouldered, storm-eyed. But there was something different about him now. A tension in his jaw, a hardness in his gaze. He was dressed for travel, his clothes dark and practical, a sword strapped to his back. Seren's heart slammed into her ribs. What do you want? Her voice came out steadier than she expected. Kael's eyes swept over her, taking in the ruins, the fire, the knife in her hand. I want to talk. We have nothing to talk about. I think we do. He took a step forward. Seren raised the knife. Don't. Kael stopped. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or amusement. You've changed, he said quietly. You made sure of that. His jaw tightened. Seren, you rejected me, she said, her voice sharp. You dragged your claws across my wrist and left me to die. You exiled me. Her throat closed up. She forced the words out anyway. You destroyed me. I saved you. The statement hit like a slap. Seren stared at him. What? Kael's expression didn't change. You think I didn't know what you were? The second that mark appeared, I felt it. The veil, the pull. You were Veilborn. He paused. And if the pack had known, they would have killed you. So you killed me first. I broke the bond before it could fully form, before you could awaken. Kael's eyes were cold. I gave you a chance to disappear, to live a quiet life somewhere far away from all of this. Seren laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound, and it echoed off the stone walls. A quiet life, she repeated. Is that what you think I had? Starving in the woods? Hiding from rogues? Learning to survive on scraps and fear? You're alive. Barely. Kael's gaze dropped to the scar on her wrist. And yet here you are. Seren felt the veil hum beneath her skin. She could reach out right now, touch his mind, make him feel everything she'd felt. The pain, the abandonment, the nights she'd curled up in the dirt and wished she'd just die already. But she didn't. Not yet. Why are you here, Kael? He met her eyes. Because you're not hiding anymore. The air between them went cold. Word spreading, Kael continued. A veil born in the northern wilds. A girl who bends wolves to her will. The other packs are starting to notice. And when they figure out who you are, he trailed off. They'll come for me, Seren finished. Yes. And you're here to what? Warn me? Protect me? She laughed again. How noble. Kael's expression hardened. I'm here to offer you a choice. I don't want anything from you. You don't have a choice. Seren's hand tightened on the knife. Kael took another step forward, and this time she didn't stop him. He moved slowly, deliberately, until he was standing less than 3 feet away. Come back to the pack, he said quietly. Seren's breath caught. Not as my mate, Kael clarified. That bond is gone, but as... He hesitated. An asset. An asset. You're powerful, Seren, more powerful than you realize, and if you're with us under our protection, the other packs won't touch you. And if I refuse, Kael's eyes went flat. Then I can't stop what's coming. Seren stared at him. For a moment, just a moment, she almost considered it, almost let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth, that he actually cared. Then she remembered the look on his face when he'd rejected her. You are unworthy. She smiled. It was the first time she'd ever looked at Kael Thornridge without fear. I don't need your protection, she said softly. Kael frowned. Seren, she reached out, not with her hand, with the veil. It slipped from her like water, invisible and swift, wrapping around Kael before he could react. She felt his wolf snarl, felt his instincts flare, felt the alpha dominance surging up to crush her, and she crushed it first. Kael gasped, his knees buckled. Seren stepped closer, her hand hovering just above his chest, the veil pouring through her fingertips. You taught me what it means to be nothing, she whispered. Kael's eyes went wide. Now I'll teach you what it means to feel everything. She pushed, and Kael Thornridge, the alpha heir, the strongest wolf in the Thornridge pack, collapsed to his knees in front of a girl he'd once called unworthy. Seren held him there for 5 seconds, 10, 15. Then she let go. Kael sucked in a breath and fell forward, catching himself on his hands, his entire body shaking. Seren stepped back. Get out, she said quietly. Kael didn't move. Get out. He pushed himself to his feet, slowly, his legs unsteady. His face was pale. His eyes were dark. When he looked at her, there was something new in his gaze, fear. This isn't over, he said, his voice rough. Seren smiled again. No, it's not. Kael turned and walked into the darkness. Seren stood there, alone in the firelight, her hand still trembling from the power she'd just unleashed. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid. She was something else, something dangerous, something the world had tried to erase. But she was still here, and she wasn't going anywhere. 3 days later, the first scouts arrived. Seren felt them before she saw them. 2 wolves moving through the forest with the kind of precision that only came from training. They were pack. Thornridge probably sent by Kael to watch her, or kill her. She didn't wait to find out which. When they got close enough, she reached out through the veil and touched their minds. Not forcefully, just a brush, a whisper. Enough to make them stop. Enough to make them turn around. They left without ever seeing her. The second group was harder. 5 wolves this time, all enforcers, all armed. They surrounded her ruins at dawn, their weapons drawn, their faces grim. Seren Vale, one of them called out. By order of Alpha Thornridge, you are to come with us, now. Seren stepped out into the open. The enforcers tensed. I'm not going anywhere, she said calmly. The lead enforcer, A broad-shouldered man with a scar across his throat raised his sword. "Then you leave us no choice." They charged. Seren raised her hand. The veil exploded outward. It hit the enforcers like a tidal wave, crashing into their minds, their instincts, their wolves. They stumbled, gasped, dropped their weapons. One of them fell to his knees, clutching his head. Another screamed. Seren didn't hurt them. She didn't need to. She just stopped them, froze their wolves mid-shift, locked their rage down, made their dominance collapse in on itself. It wasn't pain. It was worse. It was the sudden, undeniable realization that they had no control. That she did. The enforcers fled. Seren watched them go, her hand still raised, the veil humming beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. And in the back of her mind, she felt it. The shift. The moment when she stopped being prey and became something the predators feared. Kael declared war 2 weeks later. The message came via a rogue, a thin, ragged man who stumbled into her camp and dropped a sealed letter at her feet before running back into the trees. Seren opened it. The handwriting was precise, controlled. You were given a choice. You refused. The Pax will not tolerate a Veilborn. Surrender yourself, or face the consequences. This is your last warning. Seren read it twice, then she burned it. The armies came at dawn. Seren stood at the edge of the forest and watched them approach. A column of wolves stretching back as far as she could see, their armor gleaming in the early light, their banners snapping in the wind. Thornridge, Blackmoor, Silverpine, 3 of the strongest packs in the region, all marching together, all coming for her. At the front of the column rode Kael. He was in full armor now, black plate etched with silver runes, a greatsword strapped to his back. His wolf prowled just beneath his skin, visible in the glow of his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He looked like a king. Or a killer. The army stopped 100 yards away. Kael dismounted and walked forward alone. Seren didn't move. They stood facing each other across the open ground, the wind howling between them. "Last chance," Kael called out. Seren smiled. "Come and take me." Kael's expression went cold. He raised his hand. The army charged, and Seren reached out, and the world stopped breathing. The veil erupted from her like a shockwave, invisible and absolute, rippling across the battlefield in concentric waves. It didn't crash into the charging army. It slipped inside them, threading through muscle and bone and instinct, finding the place where their wolves lived and wrapping around it like a fist. The first line of soldiers stumbled, then fell. Not dead, not injured, just stopped. Their weapons clattered to the ground. Their legs gave out. They dropped to their knees, gasping, their eyes wide and unfocused, and the wolves inside them went silent. The second line tried to push through. Seren inhaled slowly and pushed harder. More soldiers fell, then more. Wave after wave, collapsing like dominoes, their armor clanging against stone and dirt. Some of them were crying. Others were screaming. A few just stared at nothing, their mouths open, their faces slack. Kael roared. The sound tore across the battlefield, raw and furious, and his wolf surged to the surface. His eyes blazed gold. Claws erupted from his fingertips. His entire body seemed to expand, muscles rippling beneath his armor as he shifted halfway. Not fully wolf, but not human either. Something in between. Something monstrous. He charged, straight at her. Seren didn't move. She just watched him come, this creature of rage and dominance and barely controlled violence. And when he was close enough that she could see the snarl twisting his face, she reached out one more time and caught him. The veil slammed into Kael like a wall. He staggered, his momentum breaking, his claws scraping furrows in the dirt as he tried to keep moving forward. But Seren's power wrapped around him, sinking into his mind, his wolf, the core of what made him alpha. She didn't just stop him. She crushed him. Kael's eyes went wide. His mouth opened in a soundless scream, every muscle in his body locked up, trembling, straining against an invisible force he couldn't see or fight or understand. Seren took a step forward, then another, until she was standing right in front of him, close enough to feel the heat radiating off his skin, close enough to see the veins standing out on his neck. You taught me what it means to be nothing, she said softly. Kale's jaw worked, but no sound came out. Seren placed her hand on his chest. The connection deepened. She felt everything, his wolf, howling and thrashing inside him, his rage, white-hot and desperate, his fear, buried deep, but there, growing with every second she held him, and beneath it all, something else. Something he'd hidden even from himself. Regret. Serene's eyes narrowed. Now I'll teach you what it means to feel everything. She pushed. And Cale Thornridge, the alpha heir, the man who had rejected her in front of the entire pack, who had carved his claws into her wrist and left her to die alone in the wilderness, dropped to his knees. The army watched in silence. No one moved. No one spoke. They just stared, their faces pale, their weapons forgotten on the ground, because the strongest wolf alive was kneeling in the dirt, and a powerless Omega was standing over him. Seren held Kyle there for a long moment, her hand pressed to his chest, her power pouring through him like molten silver. She could feel his heart hammering against his ribs, could feel his wolf whimpering, broken, begging her to stop. She almost didn't, but then she felt something else, a flicker of movement at the edge of her awareness, another presence, watching. Seren's head snapped up. At the back of the army, a figure stood apart from the others, tall, cloaked in shadow, their face hidden beneath a hood. They weren't moving, weren't attacking, just watching. And the veil around them was wrong, twisted, dark. Serene's grip on Cale faltered. The figure tilted their head. And then they were gone. Seren blinked, and the space where they'd been standing was empty. No footprints, no trace, like they'd never existed at all. What the hell? Cale gasped. Seren's attention snapped back to him. His eyes were bloodshot, his face slick with sweat, and when he looked up at her, there was something raw in his gaze, something she'd never seen before. Desperation. Please, he rasped. The word hit like a punch to the gut. Seren let go. Cale collapsed forward, catching himself on his hands, his entire body shaking. Around them, the army began to stir, soldiers pushing themselves upright, weapons clattering as they were retrieved, wolves slowly returning to their senses. Seren stepped back. Leave, she said quietly. No one moved. I said leave. Kyle lifted his head. His jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscles jumping. This isn't over. Yes, Seren said. It is. You think breaking me changes anything? You think the Pax will just accept this? Kale's voice was hoarse, shredded. They'll come for you. All of them, and next time I won't be able to stop them. I don't need you to stop them. Kale's eyes flashed. You need someone. You can't fight the entire world alone. Watch me. For a moment, something flickered across Kale's face. Frustration, maybe, or anger, or something that looked almost like pain. Then it was gone, locked down behind the cold mask he always wore. He pushed himself to his feet, slowly, like every movement hurt. You want to be alone? He said quietly. Fine. But when they come, and they will come, don't say I didn't warn you. He turned and walked away. The army followed. Seren stood there, alone in the empty field, surrounded by trampled grass and discarded weapons, and watched them disappear into the trees. Her hand was still trembling, not from fear, from power. She'd felt it, the moment when she could have killed him, when she could have reached into Kale's mind and snuffed out his wolf like a candle. It would have been easy, effortless, and part of her had wanted to. Seren looked down at her hands. They were glowing faintly, silver light pulsing beneath her skin. What am I becoming? She whispered. The forest didn't answer. But somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, and Seren felt the veil hum in response. She burned the ruins that night, not out of anger, not out of fear, just practicality. The Pax knew where she was now. They'd come back. And next time, they wouldn't send soldiers. They'd send assassins. Seren packed what little she owned, some dried food, a water skin, the knife she'd made, and set fire to the rest. The flames climbed the stone walls, crackling and hissing, smoke billowing into the sky. She watched it burn. Then she walked into the forest and didn't look back. For 3 days, she moved north, deeper into the wilderness, farther from pack territory, into places where even rogues didn't venture. The trees grew thicker here, older, their trunks wide as houses and their branches tangled overhead like a net. The air smelled of moss and decay and something ancient. Seren felt eyes on her constantly. Not wolves, something else. She caught glimpses of them in her peripheral vision, shadows that moved wrong, shapes that didn't belong. But every time she turned to look, they were gone. On the 4th day, she found the lake. It was massive, stretching out like a sheet of black glass, perfectly still despite the wind that whipped through the trees. The shore was lined with smooth stones, and in the center of the lake, a single island rose from the water, just a small outcrop of rock, maybe 30 feet across, with a single tree growing from its peak. Seren stared at it. Something about the island felt wrong, or right. She couldn't tell which. The veil pulsed. Seren frowned and stepped closer to the water's edge. Her reflection stared back at her, pale, hollow-eyed, her hair a tangled mess. She barely recognized herself. "You look like shit," a voice said behind her. Seren spun, her hand going to her knife. A woman stood at the edge of the trees. She was tall, easily 6 feet, with broad shoulders and arms corded with muscle. Her hair was silver white, cut short and choppy, and her eyes were a startling shade of amber. She wore leather armor, scarred and patched, and a sword hung at her hip. "Who the hell are you?" Seren demanded. The woman grinned. "Name's Reese, and you're Seren Vale, the Valeborn who just made Cale Thornridge kneel in front of 3 armies." Seren's grip tightened on the knife. "How do you know that?" "Word travels fast," Reese shrugged, "especially when it's that interesting." "What do you want?" "To help." Seren laughed bitterly. "Everyone wants to help, right before they stab me in the back." "Fair," Reese tilted her head, "but I'm not everyone." "Then who are you?" Reese's grin widened. "A rogue, a mercenary, a pain in the ass depending on who you ask." She paused. "And someone who's been hunting Valeborn for the last 10 years. Seren's blood went cold. Reese raised her hands. "Relax, I'm not hunting you. I'm hunting the people who are hunting you." "What's the difference?" "The difference is, I don't work for the packs." Reese stepped closer, her boots crunching on gravel. "I work for myself, and I've seen what they do to Valeborn. Seen the bodies, the burnings, the executions." Her expression hardened. "So when I heard about you, about what you did to Kyle, I figured it was time to pick a side." Seren stared at her. "Why would you help me?" "Because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And because—" Reese hesitated, then sighed. "Because my sister was Valeborn, and they killed her for it." The words hung in the air between them. Seren lowered the knife slowly. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Just don't die." Reese jerked her head toward the lake. "You planning to swim?" "I was thinking about it." "Don't. Water's cursed." Seren frowned. "What?" "The lake. It's old. Older than the packs. Older than the wolves. Maybe older than the Vale itself." Reese's eyes flicked to the island. "There's a reason nothing lives here." "Then why did you come here?" "Because nothing lives here." Reese grinned again. "Makes it a good place to hide." Seren looked back at the water. The island sat in the center, silent and waiting. "What's on the island?" she asked quietly. Reese's grin faded. "Nothing good." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I've got." Reese turned away. "Come on, we should move before—" A howl split the air. Both women froze. The sound came from the south, long, low, echoing through the trees. It was followed by another, then another. A chorus of voices, rising and falling, getting closer. "Shit," Reese muttered. Seren's heart slammed into her throat. "What is that?" "Hunters." Reese's hand went to her sword. "Cale must have sent them after you left." "How many?" "Too many." The howls grew louder. Seren turned back to the lake. The island sat there, dark and silent, and the veil pulsed again, stronger this time, urgent. "We have to go," Reese said. "Where?" "Anywhere but here." Seren looked at the island, then at the trees, then back at the island. "No," she said quietly. Reese grabbed her arm. "What?" "The island! We go to the island! Are you insane? I just told you. I know what you said. Seren pulled free. But we don't have a choice. The first hunters burst through the trees. There were 6 of them, all massive, all shifted halfway, their eyes glowing gold in the dim light. They moved fast, fanning out in a semicircle, cutting off any escape route. The lead hunter, a scarred brute with one ear missing, bared his teeth. "Seren Vale," he growled. "Alpha Thornridge wants you alive," but he didn't say anything about intact. Seren raised her hand. The veil exploded outward and hit a wall. Seren gasped, stumbling back. The hunters didn't stop, didn't slow. They just kept coming, their eyes locked on her, their faces twisted with rage. "What?" Seren tried again, pushing harder, but the veil just slid off them like water off stone. "Why isn't it working?" "They're shielded," Reese snarled, drawing her sword. "Someone's blocking you." The hunters charged. Reese met them head on, her blade flashing in the fading light. She moved like liquid, fast, brutal, efficient, cutting through the first hunter's guard and driving her sword into his shoulder. He howled and staggered back, and Reese spun, catching the second hunter across the face with her boot. But there were too many. One of them got past her and lunged at Seren. Seren threw herself sideways, hitting the ground hard, rocks digging into her ribs. The hunter's claws raked the air where her head had been a second before. She scrambled backward, her hand closing around a stone, and hurled it at the hunter's face. It bounced off harmlessly. The hunter grinned. Then Reese was there, slamming into him from the side, her sword buried in his ribs. They went down in a tangle of limbs and snarls, and Seren heard bone crack. "Run!" Reese shouted. Seren didn't argue. She turned and sprinted toward the lake, her feet pounding on stone, her lungs burning. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of fighting, steel on claws, grunts of pain, wet tearing sounds that made her stomach turn. She hit the water at full speed. It was ice cold, so cold it felt like needles stabbing into her skin. Seren gasped and kept going, wading deeper, the water rising to her knees, her thighs, her waist. A howl echoed behind her. She glanced back and saw 2 hunters breaking away from the fight, charging toward the shore. Reese was still standing, barely, blood streaming down her face, her sword raised. "Go!" she screamed. Seren dove. The water closed over her head, dark and suffocating. She kicked hard, swimming toward the island, her arms cutting through the water in desperate strokes. Her lungs burned. Her muscles screamed. But she kept going. Something grabbed her ankle. Seren's scream came out as bubbles. She twisted, looking down, and saw a hand, pale, skeletal, wrapped around her leg. More hands reached up from the depths, dozens of them, hundreds, all clawing at her clothes, her skin, pulling her down. Panic exploded in her chest. She kicked, thrashing, trying to break free, but the hands just tightened. The water grew darker, colder. She could feel herself sinking, feel the pressure building in her ears, feel her vision starting to blur. The veil pulsed, not from her, from below. Seren's eyes widened. Deep in the water, something glowed, a faint silver light, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. And the hands, the dead, grasping hands, recoiled from it. Seren reached down. Her fingers brushed the light, and the world exploded. She woke up on the island. Seren lay on her back, staring up at a sky that was too dark, too empty. Her clothes were soaked, her body ached, but she was alive. Slowly, she sat up. The island was exactly as it had looked from the shore. Bare rock, a single tree, nothing else. But the air here was different, heavier, like the space itself was holding its breath. "You made it!" Seren's head snapped around. Reese sat a few feet away, leaning against the tree, her sword resting across her knees. She looked like hell, bruises blooming across her face, blood crusted on her temple, one arm held stiffly against her side. "You're alive," Seren breathed. "Barely." Reese winced. "Those bastards hit hard." "How did you Same way you did. Swam." Reese gestured at the water. "Though I didn't get grabbed by whatever the hell that was." Seren looked back at the lake. The surface was perfectly still again, like glass. "What were those things?" she whispered. "Ghosts. Spirits. The dead." Reese shrugged. "Take your pick. This place is old, Seren. Older than you can imagine. and the dead don't rest easy here. Seren wrapped her arms around herself. Why did they let me go? Because you touched the veil. The voice came from behind them. Both women spun. A figure stood at the far edge of the island, the same cloaked figure Seren had seen on the battlefield. Up close, she could see more details. They were tall, androgynous, with skin so pale it was almost translucent, and eyes that glowed faintly silver. Who are you? Seren demanded. The figure tilted their head. I have many names, but you may call me Ash. What do you want? To offer you a choice. Ash stepped closer, their movements unnaturally smooth. You are Veilborn, Seren Veil, one of the last, and you stand at a crossroads. I don't understand. The veil is not just power. It is balance, life and death, order and chaos, and for centuries the packs have upset that balance. Ash's eyes glowed brighter. They took dominance and made it tyranny, took strength and made it cruelty, and they hunted your kind to extinction because you were the only thing that could stop them. Seren's throat went dry. What are you saying? I'm saying you have a choice. You can run, hide, live quietly in the wilderness and hope they never find you. Ash paused. Or you can fight, not just for yourself, but for every Veilborn who came before you, every wolf who suffered under the pack's rule, every soul who died because they were too weak to matter. I don't want to fight. Then you'll die. The words were simple, final. Ash turned away. The packs are gathering. Kael Thornridge has called a summit, every alpha from every territory. They're planning to hunt you down, to erase you, just like they erased the others. Seren's hands clenched into fists. How do you know this? Because I was there when they erased the first Veilborn. I watched them burn. I watched them scream. Ash looked back over their shoulder. And I will not watch it happen again. What do you want from me? I want you to become what they fear most. Ash's smile was cold. I want you to break their system, shatter their hierarchy, tear down everything they've built and remake it in your image. I can't. You already have. Seren stared at them. Ash gestured toward the shore. You made Kael Thornridge kneel. You stopped an army without lifting a blade. You touched the veil itself and survived. They stepped closer. You are more powerful than you realize, Seren. And if you choose to walk this path, if you choose to fight, I will teach you how to wield that power. And if I don't? Ash's expression didn't change. Then Kael will come for you, and he will not come alone. Seren looked at Rhys. The mercenary shrugged. Don't look at me. I'm just here for the chaos. Seren turned back to Ash. If I do this, if I fight, what happens to the packs? That depends on you. Ash's eyes gleamed. You could destroy them, or you could save them. The choice is yours. Seren's mind raced. She thought of Kael, his cold eyes, his cruel words, the way he'd rejected her like she was nothing. She thought of the pack, the jeers and whispers and endless contempt. She thought of every moment she'd spent alone in the wilderness, starving and freezing and wishing she could just disappear. And then she thought of the hunters, the armies, the fear in Kael's eyes when she'd made him kneel. She thought of power, and for the first time in her life, she wanted it. Teach me, Seren said quietly. Ash smiled. Then let us begin. The training started immediately. Ash led Seren to the center of the island, where the tree stood, a massive, gnarled thing with bark like iron and branches that seemed to reach toward the sky. Its roots twisted through the rock, disappearing into cracks and crevices. Sit, Ash commanded. Seren sat. Ash circled her slowly. The veil is not a weapon. It is a current, a river of instinct and emotion that flows through every living thing. Most wolves can feel it. Alphas can command it. But Veilborn... Ash paused. Veilborn can reshape it. I know that already. Do you? Ash stopped in front of her. Then why can't you break the shields the hunters wore? Seren's jaw tightened. I don't know. Because you're using the veil like a hammer. Brute force. Overwhelming power. Ash crouched down, their eyes level with hers. But shields are not broken by force. They're unraveled, dismantled. You have to find the seams, the places where the weave is weakest, and pull. How? By listening. Ash placed a hand on Serene's chest, right over her heart. The veil surged. Serene gasped as power flooded through her. Not hers, but Ash's. It was cold and ancient and vast, like staring into the bottom of an ocean. She could feel it wrapping around her, sinking into her bones, her blood, her mind. "Feel it," Ash whispered. "The veil is alive. It breathes. It moves. And if you listen, truly listen, it will tell you everything." Serene closed her eyes. At first there was nothing, just darkness and the pounding of her own heart. Then slowly she began to hear it, a hum, faint and distant, like wind through leaves. It grew louder, clearer, until she could make out individual threads, emotions, instincts, fragments of thought. She could feel wolves moving through the forest miles away, could sense their hunger, their fear, their rage. And beneath it all, deeper, a pulse, the heartbeat of the veil itself. "Good," Ash said. "Now reach out, not with force, with intention." Serene exhaled slowly and let the veil flow through her fingers. It felt different this time, lighter, less like a weapon and more like an extension of herself. She could feel it branching out, spreading across the island, the lake, the forest beyond. And then she felt them. The hunters. They were regrouping on the shore, 6 of them still alive, their shields glowing faintly in her mind's eye. But now she could see the structure of those shields, the way the threads were woven together, tight and precise. She reached for the nearest one, found the seam, and pulled. The shield unraveled. The hunter gasped, stumbling, and Serene felt his mind open up to her, raw and unprotected. She pushed. The hunter dropped to his knees. "Yes," Ash said, their voice filled with satisfaction. "Now the others." Serene went through them one by one, dismantling their shields, slipping into their minds, forcing them to their knees. It was easier than she expected, almost effortless. When she opened her eyes, all 6 hunters were kneeling on the shore, their heads bowed, their weapons discarded. Reese let out a low whistle. "Holy shit!" Serene stared at her hands. They were glowing again, brighter this time, the silver light pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "This is just the beginning," Ash said. "There is so much more you can do, so much more you will do." Serene looked up at them. "What if I lose control? Then you'll become exactly what they fear." Ash's smile was sharp. "But isn't that the point?" The summit was held at Blackstone Keep, a massive fortress carved into the side of a mountain high above the territories. It was neutral ground, a place where alphas could meet without fear of ambush, or so they thought. Kale stood at the head of the council table, his hands braced on the polished wood, his eyes scanning the faces of the other alphas. There were 12 of them in total, leaders from every major pack in the region: Blackmore, Silverpine, Ironwood, Stormclaw. All of them here because of one girl. "She has to die," Alpha Voss of Blackmore said flatly. He was a massive man, easily 300 pounds of muscle, with a face like a clenched fist. "No debate. No negotiation. The Veilborn is a threat to every pack in this room." "Agreed," said Alpha Kara of Silverpine. She was smaller, leaner, but no less dangerous. "We can't allow her power to grow unchecked." Kale said nothing. "Thornridge," Voss snapped. "You brought this problem to our doorstep. What do you have to say?" Kale's jaw tightened. "She's not a problem. She's—" "What? Your mate?" Voss laughed. "You rejected her, or did you forget?" "I didn't forget." "Then what are you waiting for? Send your hunters. Kill her. End this." "It's not that simple." "Why the hell not?" "Because I can't." The thought came unbidden and Kyle shoved it down. But it was true. He'd tried. Sent his best hunters, his strongest enforcers. And Serene had broken them all. No, not broken. Released. That was the word she'd used. And it haunted him. "She's more powerful than you realize," Kyle said finally. "If we move against her recklessly, she'll destroy us." "Then we don't move recklessly," Kara said. "We move strategically. Overwhelming force. Every pack. Every alpha. We hit her all at once, and we don't stop until she's dead." The room murmured in agreement. Kale looked around the table. These were the most powerful wolves in the world, alphas who ruled territories the size of countries, who commanded armies, who bent thousands to their will, and they were afraid. He could see it in their eyes, hear it in their voices. They were terrified of one girl. There's another option, Kael said quietly. The room went silent. Voss leaned forward. What option? We bring her in, alive, control her, use her. Are you insane? Kara hissed. You can't control a Veilborn. That's the whole point. Maybe not. But we can try. Kael's eyes hardened. She's powerful. Unprecedented. If we could harness that power, turn it to our advantage, she'd kill us all the first chance she got, Voss interrupted. Maybe. Or maybe she'd see reason. Reason? Kara laughed bitterly. You rejected her, exiled her, left her to die. And now you think she'll just, what, forgive you? Kael didn't answer, because he didn't know. All he knew was that when Saren had looked at him on that battlefield, when she'd placed her hand on his chest and forced him to feel everything, he'd seen something in her eyes. Not hatred, not rage. Something worse. Pity. Vote, Voss said, all in favor of killing the Veilborn. 11 hands went up. Kael's stayed down. Voss's eyes narrowed. You're outvoted, Thornridge. The decision is made. We hunt her down, and we end her. Kael pushed himself away from the table. Then you hunt her without me. Excuse me? I won't be part of this. Voss stood, his chair scraping against stone. You don't have a choice. Kael met his gaze. Yes, I do. For a moment, the two alphas stared at each other across the table, dominance crackling in the air between them. Then Voss smiled. Fine, he said softly. Stay out of it. But when we bring back her corpse, don't say we didn't warn you. Kael turned and walked out. Behind him, the alphas began to plan. What? Seren felt them coming 3 days before they arrived. She was sitting on the shore of the lake, her feet dangling in the water, when the veil pulsed, urgent, insistent. She closed her eyes and reached out, following the thread, and felt them. An army. Bigger than before. Stronger. Every alpha, every pack, moving as one. Coming for her. They're early, Reese said from behind her. Seren didn't open her eyes. How long? 3 days, maybe less. Can we run? Not fast enough. Seren exhaled slowly. Then we fight. Reese was quiet for a moment. Then, you sure about this? No? Seren opened her eyes and looked at the mercenary. But I don't have a choice. Reese nodded. Fair enough. Ash appeared beside them, silent as smoke. The time has come. Seren stood. What do I do? You face them. Ash's eyes glowed. And you show them what it means to be Veilborn. Seren looked out across the lake, toward the forest, toward the armies marching through the trees, toward the end, or the beginning. She wasn't sure which. Then let's finish this, Seren said. The words hung in the air for a heartbeat before Ash moved. Fast. Too fast. One moment they were standing beside her, the next they had their hand wrapped around her throat, lifting her off the ground like she weighed nothing. Seren gasped, her fingers clawing at Ash's wrist, but it was like trying to scratch stone. What? She choked out. Ash's eyes blazed silver. Did you really think I was helping you out of kindness? Reese lunged forward, sword drawn, but Ash flicked their free hand and the mercenary flew backward, slamming into the tree hard enough to crack the bark. She crumpled to the ground and didn't move. Reese! Seren tried to reach for the veil, tried to push back, but Ash's grip tightened and suddenly she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't... Ash leaned in close. You're exactly what I needed you to be. Powerful. Desperate. Perfectly malleable. Seren's vision started to blur. Black spots danced across her eyes. The veil doesn't need balance, Ash whispered. It needs a ruler. And you, little Veilborn, are going to give it one. They released her. Seren collapsed to the ground, gasping, her hands pressed to her throat, her lungs burned. Her head spun. She tried to push herself up, but her arms wouldn't hold her. Ash crouched down beside her. I've been searching for decades, waiting for a Veilborn strong enough to survive what comes next. And you, rejected, broken, Desperate for power, you're perfect. What are you? Seren rasped. I told you, I have many names. Ash's smile was cold. But the wolves used to call me the Hollow, the space between life and death, the void where the veil was born. Seren's blood went ice cold. You're not real. Oh, I'm very real. I'm just not alive. Not in the way you understand it. Ash stood. I was the first Veilborn, the one who touched the veil when it was still raw and wild and hungry, and it consumed me, burned away everything human until only the power remained. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what you're about to become. Ash raised their hand, and the island began to shake. The tree's roots erupted from the stone, writhing like serpents, and wrapped around Seren's wrists and ankles, pinning her flat against the ground. She screamed and thrashed, but the roots just tightened, cutting into her skin. The armies are coming, Ash said calmly. Every alpha, every pack, hundreds of wolves, all converging on this place to kill you. And when they arrive, you're going to do exactly what I've trained you to do. I won't. You will. Because I'm going to force every ounce of power you possess to the surface. I'm going to crack you open and let the veil flood through you until there's nothing left but raw, unstoppable force. Ash's eyes glowed brighter. And when those wolves arrive, you won't just break them. You'll annihilate them. Seren's heart slammed against her ribs. You'll kill them all. No, Seren, you will. I won't do it. Ash knelt beside her again. You won't have a choice. The veil will take over. It will use you like a weapon, like a conduit. And when it's done, when every wolf on this shore is dead, the power will have nowhere to go but inward. They traced a finger down her cheek. And just like me, you'll burn. Everything human inside you will be consumed, and what's left will be pure Veilborn, immortal, untouchable, mine. You're insane. I'm patient. Ash stood. I've waited 100 years for this moment, for a Veilborn strong enough to become what I need, a vessel, a successor. They turned toward the lake. And once you've transcended, once you've become like me, we'll reshape this world together. No more packs, no more alphas, just the veil and those who serve it. Seren pulled against the roots, but they didn't budge. Someone will stop you. Who? The alphas marching to their deaths? The mercenary bleeding out behind you? Ash glanced back. Or perhaps Cale Thornridge, who rejected you and left you to rot. The name hit like a fist. Seren's jaw clenched. Don't. He's not coming to save you, Seren. He voted to let them kill you. You're lying. Am I? Ash's smile widened. The summit at Blackstone Keep. 12 alphas, 1 vote. Kill the Veilborn. 11 hands went up. Only 1 stayed down. They paused. Want to guess whose? Seren's chest tightened. He walked out, Ash continued, refused to participate. But he didn't stop them either. Didn't warn you. Didn't lift a finger to protect you. He just left. Shut up. He used you, Seren, kept you weak and powerless so you'd never be a threat. And when you finally became something more, he tried to control you. And when that failed, shut up. The veil exploded outward. Seren screamed, and the roots binding her arms shattered, disintegrating into ash. She lurched upright, her hands blazing with silver light, and hurled everything she had at Ash. The power hit them dead center. Ash didn't move. They just stood there, smiling, as the veil washed over them like water. When it faded, they were completely unharmed. Good, Ash said softly. You're learning to hate. That will make this easier. Seren's hands shook. I'm going to kill you. Not today. Ash gestured, and the roots wrapped around Seren's wrists again, yanking her back down. Today, you're going to lie here and wait. And when the armies arrive, you're going to show them exactly what a Veilborn can do. They turned and walked toward the edge of the island. Wait, Seren gasped. What about Reese? Ash didn't look back. She's already dead. No. But Ash was gone. Vanished. Seren thrashed against the roots, screaming, pouring every ounce of strength she had into breaking free. But the more she fought, the tighter they became, until she could barely move at all. Her wrist throbbed. The rejection scar burned like fire. And in the distance, she could hear them. The armies. Coming closer. Reese woke up to the taste of blood. She groaned and pushed herself upright, her ribs screaming in protest. Her head felt like someone had used it as a drum, and her vision swam for a few seconds before finally settling. She was still on the island, still alive, barely. Reese spat blood onto the ground and looked around. Seren was pinned to the earth by massive roots, her wrists and ankles bound, her face pale. She was conscious, eyes open, chest heaving, but she wasn't moving.
"Seren," Reese croaked. Seren's head turned. "You're alive." "Surprised the hell out of me, too." Reese staggered to her feet, swaying. "What happened?" "Ash, Seren's voice broke. "They were using me, this whole time. They're going to force me to kill the armies when they arrive and use the power to turn me into something like them." Reese's jaw tightened. "Shit. I can't break free. I've tried. The roots, they're connected to the veil somehow. Every time I push, they just get stronger."
Reese limped over and examined the roots. They were thick as her arm, pulsing faintly with silver light. She drew her sword and struck one. The blade bounced off. "Double shit!" Reese sheathed the weapon. "Okay, new plan. A howl echoed across the lake. Both women froze. Reese turned slowly and looked toward the shore. The armies had arrived. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Wolves in human form and shifted form, all armored, all armed, spreading out along the shoreline like a living wall. Banners snapped in the wind: Blackmoor, Silverpine, Ironwood, Stormclaw, every major pack in the region. And at the front, standing in a loose semicircle, were the Alphas. Reese swore under her breath. "We're dead." "Not yet." Seren's voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. "You need to run. Swim for the other side of the lake. Get as far away as you can before— I'm not leaving you." "Reese, I said I'm not leaving." Reese turned back to her. "My sister died alone, scared, surrounded by wolves who wanted her dead just for existing. I'm not letting that happen to you." Seren's eyes glistened. "You can't stop this." "Maybe not, but I can stand with you when it happens." Before Seren could respond, a voice boomed across the water. "Seren Vale!" Alpha Voss. He stood at the edge of the shore, massive and imposing, his arms crossed over his chest. His voice carried like thunder. "You are charged with forbidden power, with threatening the natural order, with crimes against every pack in this territory." He paused. "Surrender yourself, and your death will be swift." Seren said nothing. Voss's expression darkened. "Or we come to you, and we make it slow." Reese leaned down. "What do we do?" Seren closed her eyes. "We wait." "For what?" "For them to realize I'm not surrendering." It didn't take long. Voss raised his hand and the armies began to move. Wolves waded into the water, their weapons raised, their eyes glowing. They moved in formation, disciplined, coordinated, unstoppable. The first wave hit the island within minutes, scrambling up onto the rocks, spreading out in a circle around Seren and Reese. Reese drew her sword. The wolves closed in, and Seren felt the veil begin to wake. Not from her, from the island itself. The roots binding her wrists pulsed, and power flooded through them, raw, ancient, overwhelming. It poured into her veins like molten silver, filling every cell, every nerve, until she thought she might explode. "No," she gasped. "No, please." The veil didn't care. It erupted from her in a shockwave so powerful the island cracked beneath her. The wolves screamed. Seren screamed with them. The power tore through the first wave like they were made of paper. She felt their minds open to her, felt their wolves howl in terror, felt their bodies collapse as the veil ripped through them and left them hollow. Not dead, worse, empty. Their wolves were just gone. Severed, erased. Seren tried to stop it, tried to pull back, but the roots held her down and the power kept coming, wave after wave, unstoppable. The second wave fell. Then the third. Bodies littered the shore, twitching, gasping, their eyes wide and vacant. The remaining wolves hesitated, fear spreading through their ranks like wildfire. And then the Alphas moved. All of them. Together. They shifted mid-stride, massive, terrifying, their forms twice the size of normal wolves. Alpha Voss led the charge, his jaws wide, his claws extended, and the others followed, a wall of fur and fury and dominance. The veil pulsed,
Seren felt it reaching for them, felt it wrapping around their minds, and she knew that if it touched them, they would die. Not just lose their wolves, die. "Stop!" she screamed. The veil hesitated, just for a second, just long enough for Seren to feel the shift inside her, the moment when control flickered, unstable, fragile. She reached for it, grabbed hold, and pulled. The roots around her wrists shattered. The veil snapped back into her like a rubber band, and Seren gasped, her entire body convulsing. The power was still there, still enormous, still terrifying, but it was hers again, not Ash's. Hers. The alphas skidded to a halt 10 feet away. Seren pushed herself to her feet, swaying, her hands glowing so bright it hurt to look at them. She could feel the veil humming beneath her skin, feel it waiting, eager, hungry. "Don't," she said quietly. Voss snarled. "You think you can stop all of us?" "I don't think." Seren raised her hand. "I know." Voss lunged. Seren didn't move. She just reached out, not with force, but with precision, and found the seam in his shield, found the place where his dominance was woven tightest, and unraveled it. Voss collapsed mid-leap, his shift reversing, his body slamming into the ground hard enough to crack stone. He lay there, gasping, his eyes wide with shock. The other alphas froze. "I don't want to kill you," Seren said. Her voice was steady, calm. "But I will if you make me." "You're a monster," Alpha Kara hissed. "No." Seren looked at her. "I'm what you made me." Kara's face twisted. "We should have killed you when you were still weak." "You tried." Seren smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You failed." "This isn't over," Voss rasped from the ground. "We'll keep coming. We'll hunt you to the ends of the earth. Enough." The voice cut through the air like a blade. Everyone turned. Kyle stood at the edge of the island, water dripping from his clothes, his sword in his hand. Seren's breath caught. He looked the same, storm-gray eyes, sharp jaw, black hair plastered to his skull, but there was something different in his expression, something raw. "Kyle," Voss spat, "you said you wouldn't interfere." "I changed my mind." Kale's eyes locked on Seren. "Everyone leaves. Now." "Are you insane?" Kara snarled. "We have her cornered. We can end this." "I said leave." The command in his voice was absolute. Kale was still an alpha, still powerful, and his dominance rolled across the island like a physical force. The wolves on the shore flinched. Even the other alphas hesitated. Voss pushed himself upright. "This is a mistake." "Probably." Kale didn't look away from Seren. "But it's mine to make." For a long moment, no one moved. Then slowly Voss turned and walked toward the water. The other alphas followed. One by one, the armies began to retreat, wading back across the lake, dragging their wounded with them. Within minutes, the island was empty, except for 3 people: Seren, Reese, and Kyle. Reese broke the silence first. "Well, that was unexpected." She sheathed her sword. "I'm going to go check the perimeter, or something. You two clearly need to talk." She limped toward the far side of the island, leaving Seren and Kyle alone. Seren stared at him. Kale stared back. "Why are you here?" she asked finally. "Because I couldn't let them kill you." "You voted for it." Kale's jaw tightened. "No, I abstained." "You didn't stop them." "I couldn't. Not alone." He took a step closer. "But I'm here now." "To do what? Finish the job yourself?" "To protect you." Seren laughed, harsh and bitter. "I don't need your protection." "I know." Kale's eyes swept over her, the glowing hands, the torn clothes, the bodies scattered on the shore behind her. "I can see that." "Then what do you want?" Kyle was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was low. "I want to tell you the truth." "Which part? The part where you rejected me? Or the part where you exiled me? Or maybe the part where you sent hunters to drag me back like an animal?" "All of it." Kyle's gaze didn't waver. "I knew what you were the second the bond formed. I felt the veil in you, felt the potential, and I was terrified. So you destroyed me. I tried to save you." Kale's hands clenched into fists. "The packs hunt veil-born Seren. They burn them alive.
And if they'd known what you were, if that bond had fully formed, they would have killed you before you ever had a chance to awaken. So you killed me first. I broke the bond. I exiled you. I gave you a chance to disappear. And instead, I became exactly what you feared. Yes. Seren took a step toward him. Do you regret it? Kyle met her gaze. Every day. The words hung between them. Seren felt something inside her chest crack. Not the bond. That was long gone. Something else. Something she'd buried deep and tried to forget. Hope. You're lying, she whispered. I'm not. You rejected me. You called me unworthy. I know what I said. Kael's voice roughened. And I meant it. At the time. Because I was trying to convince myself that breaking the bond was the right thing to do, that I was protecting you. But I was wrong. Seren's throat tightened. You destroyed me. I know. You left me alone in the wilderness to die. I know. And now you expect me to what? Forgive you? Kael shook his head. No, I don't expect forgiveness. He stopped, his jaw working. I needed you to know that I'm sorry. For all of it. Seren stared at him. Part of her wanted to scream, to lash out, to make him feel every second of pain she'd endured. But another part, a smaller, quieter part, just wanted to understand. Why now? She asked. Why come here? Why risk everything? Kael took another step closer. Because when I saw you on that battlefield, when you made me kneel, I felt it. The bond. Or what's left of it. It's not gone, Seren. It's broken, twisted, wrong, but it's still there. Seren's breath caught. That's impossible. Is it? Kael raised his hand, and she saw it, a faint scar on his wrist, in the exact same place hers was. I felt you when you were starving, when you were freezing, when you wanted to die, and I did nothing. Then why? Because I was a coward. Kael's eyes blazed. I told myself I was protecting you, that breaking the bond was mercy. But the truth is I was afraid of what you'd become, afraid of losing control, afraid of me. Yes. Seren looked down at her hands. They were still glowing faintly, the veil pulsing beneath her skin. You should be afraid, she said quietly. I'm not the same person you rejected. I know. I could kill you right now, without even trying. I know that too. Then why are you still here? Kael was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I need to know if there's anything left worth saving. In you, in me, in this. He gestured between them. Whatever this is. Seren's chest tightened. She wanted to say no. Wanted to tell him there was nothing left, that he'd destroyed everything good between them, that she'd rather die than trust him again. But the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, beneath the anger and the pain and the power, there was still a part of her that remembered. The way he'd looked at her when the bond first formed. The split second of wonder in his eyes before the fear took over. The feeling of being wanted just for a moment before it all fell apart. I don't know, she whispered. Kael nodded slowly. That's fair. He turned to leave. Wait. Kyle stopped. Seren took a breath. Ash. The one who's been training me. They're not what they seem. They're trying to use me, to turn me into something. I know, Kael said. Seren froze. What? Kael turned back to face her. I know about Ash, about what they are, what they're trying to do. How? Because I've been tracking them for months. Kael's expression was grim. Ever since I realized you were still alive. Ever since I felt you growing stronger. Seren's mind raced. You knew, this whole time, you knew they were manipulating me. I suspected. I couldn't prove it, but yes. And you didn't warn me. I tried. The hunters I sent, the ones you broke, they weren't there to kill you. They were there to bring you back, to get you away from Ash before what? Kael's jaw tightened. Before they consumed you. The words hit like ice water. Seren stumbled back. What are you talking about? Ash was the first Veilborn, the strongest, and when they touched the veil in its rawest form, it burned them from the inside out, hollowed them, left nothing but power and hunger. Kyle stepped closer. They've been searching for another Veilborn ever since. Someone strong enough to survive what they went through. Someone they could use as a vessel, Seren whispered. Kyle's eyes darkened. You already know. They told me. Right before the armies arrived. They're going to force me to kill everyone and use the power to turn me into something like them. Then we have to stop them. How? Seren gestured helplessly. They're everywhere and nowhere. I can't even touch them. Maybe you can't. Kale's hand went to his sword. But together, no. The word came out sharp. Kyle frowned. Seren, I don't need your help. I don't need you. Seren's hands clenched into fists. You rejected me. You destroyed me. And now you want to swoop in and save me like some kind of hero? I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm trying to make things right. You can't. Some things can't be fixed. I know that. Kael's voice was quiet. But I have to try. Seren stared at him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Reese's voice cut through the silence. Guys, we have a problem. Both of them turned. Reese was standing at the edge of the island, pointing toward the shore. The armies were regrouping, but they weren't preparing to attack. They were kneeling, all of them. Hundreds of wolves down on their knees, their heads bowed, their weapons discarded. And standing in the center of them, arms raised, eyes blazing with silver light. Ash. No, Seren breathed. Ash's voice echoed across the water, amplified by the veil. You thought you could defy me, little Veilborn? You thought you could take control? The roots on the island began to writhe again, reaching for Seren. She raised her hands, but before she could react, Kyle was there, his sword cutting through the nearest root, his body between her and Ash. Get behind me, he growled. I don't need... I know, but I'm not leaving. The roots lunged. Kale met them head on, his blade flashing in the dim light. He moved like water, fast, brutal, efficient, cutting through root after root. But there were too many. One wrapped around his ankle and yanked him off his feet. Kyle! Seren screamed. She reached for the veil, reached for the power inside her, and hurled everything she had at the roots. They shattered. Kale scrambled upright, breathing hard. Thanks. Don't mention it, Ash laughed. The sound echoed across the lake, cold and mocking. You think you can fight me? I am the Veil Child. I am the beginning and the end. I am... Talking too much, Reese muttered. She hurled her sword. It spun through the air, end over end, and buried itself in Ash's chest. For a moment, everything stopped. Ash looked down at the blade protruding from their sternum. Then they smiled and pulled it out. The wound didn't bleed. It just closed, like it had never been there. Nice try, Ash said. They snapped their fingers. Reese screamed and collapsed, clutching her head. Reese! Seren started toward her, but Kyle grabbed her arm. We have to go, now. I'm not leaving her. If we stay, we're all dead. Seren looked at Reese, writhing on the ground, blood streaming from her nose. Looked at Ash, standing on the shore, surrounded by kneeling wolves. Looked at Kyle, his eyes dark with urgency, and made a choice. She placed her hand on the ground. The veil pulsed, and the island exploded. Trak. Seren didn't remember hitting the water. 1 second she was standing on the island, the next she was underwater, sinking, her lungs screaming for air. She kicked hard, swimming upward, and broke the surface, gasping. The island was gone. Just gone. In its place was a massive crater, water rushing in to fill the void. Debris floated everywhere, chunks of stone, pieces of the tree, bodies, so many bodies. Seren spun in the water, searching. Kyle! No response. Reese! Nothing. Panic clawed at her chest. She dove back under, swimming through the murky water, her hands reaching, searching. Fingers closed around hers. Seren gasped and looked up. Kyle. He was bleeding from a gash on his forehead, his face pale, but he was alive. He pulled her upward, and they broke the surface together. Where's Reese? Seren gasped. Kale's expression darkened. I don't know. They searched for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The lake was chaos. Wolves thrashing in the water, debris floating everywhere, bodies drifting face down. But no Reese. We have to go, Kale said finally. Before Ash,
I'm not leaving without her. Saren, I'm not leaving her. Kale grabbed her shoulders. She's gone. You don't know that. I do. His voice was gentle, sad. I'm sorry, but we have to go. Now. Saren looked at him, then at the water, then back at him, and felt something inside her break. Not the bond, not the veil. Something deeper. The part of her that still believed things could get better. Okay, she whispered. They swam, together, toward the far shore, away from the armies, away from Ash, away from everything, and behind them the lake swallowed the ruins of the island whole. Go'ok. They made it to shore just as the sun began to rise. Saren collapsed onto the rocks, shivering, her entire body numb. Kyle knelt beside her, equally exhausted. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Saren said, "She's really gone." Kale didn't answer. Saren closed her eyes. I killed her. I destroyed the island. You saved us. I killed her. You didn't have a choice. Saren's hands clenched into fists. There's always a choice. Not always. She looked at him. How do you live with it? The things you've done? The people you've hurt? Kale was quiet for a moment. Then, you don't. You just keep moving and hope that one day you'll do enough good to balance it out. Does it ever balance? No. The word was simple. Final. Saren looked away. In the distance, she could see the armies regrouping on the opposite shore. They were smaller now, dozens dead, maybe hundreds. But they were still there, still hunting her. We need to move, Kyle said. Where? I don't know. Somewhere Ash can't find us. Ash can find us anywhere. Then we keep running. Saren pushed herself upright. Her legs shook. Her wrist throbbed, but she stood. I'm done running, she said quietly. Kale frowned. What? I said I'm done running. Saren looked at him. Ash wants a fight? Fine. I'll give them one. Saren, you can't. I can. And I will. Her hands began to glow again. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life hiding, waiting for them to find me, waiting for the next attack. She took a breath. I'm going to end this. How? Saren smiled. It was a cold, dangerous expression. By becoming exactly what they fear. Kale stared at her, and for the first time Saren saw something new in his eyes. Not fear, not pity, respect. Then I'm coming with you, he said. You don't have to. I know, but I'm coming anyway. Saren looked at him, this man who had rejected her, broken her, left her to die. This man who had come back. Why? She asked. Kyle met her gaze. Because you're right. This has to end, and I'm done being a coward. For a moment, Saren saw it. The person he could have been. The person he might still become, if they survived. Okay, she said finally. Then we do this together. Kale nodded. They turned and walked into the forest. Behind them, the sun crept over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, and somewhere in the distance, Ash watched and smiled. Come find me, little Veilborn, they whispered. Let's see if you're ready to become what you were always meant to be. The words echoed in Saren's skull as she and Kyle pushed deeper into the wilderness. Her clothes clung to her skin, still soaked from the lake, and every step sent water squelching inside her boots. The forest pressed in around them, dark, twisted, wrong. The trees here looked sick, their bark blackened and peeling, their branches reaching toward the sky like grasping fingers. Kale walked beside her, silent, his hand never far from his sword. Blood had dried on his temple from the gash on his forehead, leaving a dark streak down the side of his face. He looked like he'd been through a war. They both did. We need to stop, Kale said finally. His voice was rough, exhausted. Find shelter. You can't keep going like this. I'm fine. You're not fine. You almost died back there. Almost doesn't count. Kale grabbed her arm, spinning her around. Saren, stop. She yanked free. I can't stop. If I stop, I'll think about her, about Reese, about what I did. You didn't kill her. I destroyed the island. I brought it down on top of her. Saren's voice cracked. She's dead because of me.
She's dead because Ash used you, because the Pax forced you into a corner. Don't take that on yourself. Who else should take it? Seren's hands clenched into fists. I'm the one with the power. I'm the one who... You're the one who survived, Kyle interrupted. And Reese would want you to keep surviving, not tear yourself apart over something you couldn't control. Seren stared at him. How would you know what she'd want? Because I saw the way she looked at you. She cared about you. And she died buying you time to escape. Kyle's jaw tightened. Don't waste that. The words hit hard. Seren looked away, blinking against the burn in her eyes. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Keep going. Keep fighting. I'm so tired, Kyle. I'm so fucking tired. Kale was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I know. They stood there in the sick forest, surrounded by dying trees and poisoned air, and for a long moment neither of them moved. Then Kyle said, There's a place, north of here. The old wolves called it the Wound. Seren looked up. What is it? The source. Where the veil first tore into our world. Kale's expression was grim. It's raw, untamed, dangerous as hell. But if you want power, real power, enough to stop Ash, that's where you'll find it. You think I should go there? I think it's the only option we have left. Kyle paused. But I also think it'll kill you. Then it kills me. Seren, what other choice do I have? She stepped closer to him. Ash is immortal. They can't be killed by normal means. The only way to stop them is to become strong enough to match them. And the only way to do that is to touch the raw veil. It's not that simple. The raw veil doesn't merge with people. It consumes them, burns them from the inside out. That's what happened to Ash. Then I'll burn! Seren's eyes blazed. At least I'll take them with me. Kyle stared at her. His jaw worked like he was chewing glass. Then he looked away, one hand dragging through his wet hair. 3 days north, he said finally. If we move fast, then let's move. What? The forest grew darker as they traveled. The trees twisted into unnatural shapes, their trunks split and oozing black sap. The ground beneath their feet turned soft and spongy, like walking on rotten flesh. The air tasted metallic, and every breath felt like swallowing rust. They barely spoke. Kael led the way, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. Seren followed, her mind churning with images she couldn't shake. Reese sinking into the black water. Kael screaming as Ash tore into his mind, the armies kneeling on the shore, their wills bent by Ash's power, and underneath it all the constant hum of the veil inside her, restless, hungry, demanding more. On the first night they stopped in a small clearing. Kael tried to start a fire, but the wood was too damp and rotted. They ate dried meat in silence, chewing mechanically, tasting nothing. Tell me about the wound, Seren said finally. Kael looked up. What do you want to know? Everything. What it looks like, what it does, how dangerous it really is. Kael set down his food. It's a tear in reality. A permanent wound where the veil broke through from whatever dimension it comes from. The area around it is completely corrupted. Nothing lives there anymore. The ground is glass. The air burns if you breathe too much of it. And the veil itself? Raw, unfiltered, infinite. Kael's eyes were dark. Anyone who touches it either dies instantly or goes insane. There's no middle ground. Except Ash. Ash survived because they were the first, because the veil was looking for a host and they were the only option. Kael leaned forward. But you're not the only option anymore, Seren. The veil has had 100 years to grow stronger. If you touch it now, it'll rip you apart. Maybe. Or maybe I'm strong enough. You're not. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Kael's voice was sharp. I can feel your power, Seren. It's impressive, but it's nothing compared to what's waiting at the wound. You go there, you die. That's not pessimism. That's fact. Seren met his gaze. Then why are you taking me? Kael was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. Because I owe you, and because if you're going to die, you shouldn't die alone. Seren's throat tightened. I don't want your pity. It's not pity, it's... Kael stopped, looked away. It's guilt. For rejecting me? For everything. For what I did to you. For what I turned you into. You didn't turn me into anything. I did this to myself. No. You became this because I broke you. Kale's hands clenched. If I'd been brave enough to accept the bond, none of this would have happened. You'd still be, what? Weak? Powerless? Living in the pack house, serving wolves who looked down on me? Seren laughed bitterly. You think that life was better? It was safer. I don't want safe. I never did. Seren stood. I want to matter. I want to be strong enough that no one can ever hurt me again. And if that means touching the raw veil and risking everything, then that's what I'll do. She walked to the edge of the clearing and stood there, staring into the dark forest. Behind her, Kael said quietly, You already matter. Seren closed her eyes. Not enough. Achwums. On the second day, they found the bodies. There were 3 of them, scattered across a small ravine. Wolves, or what used to be wolves. Their bodies were twisted, contorted into impossible shapes, their mouths frozen open in silent screams. Their skin had turned gray and brittle, like ash. Kael knelt beside one. They touched the corrupted ground. Let the veil seep into them. How long ago? Days, maybe weeks. Hard to tell. Kael stood. We're getting close. They kept moving. The corruption grew worse. The trees here were completely dead, their trunks hollow and blackened. The ground cracked beneath their feet, and when Seren looked down, she could see silver light glowing in the fissures. The veil, leaking out, poisoning everything. How much farther? She asked. Half a day? Maybe less. They pressed on. That night, they didn't stop to rest. Couldn't. The air was too toxic, too thick with veil corruption. They walked through the darkness, guided only by the faint silver glow seeping from the ground. And then, just before dawn, they saw it. The forest ended abruptly, the trees giving way to a massive crater carved into the earth. It stretched out before them, easily a mile across, its edges jagged and scorched black. The bottom of the crater was smooth glass, black and reflective, like a mirror. And in the center, a tear. A vertical rip in the air itself, maybe 20 feet tall, glowing with brilliant silver light. It pulsed and writhed like something alive, and even from the edge of the crater, Seren could feel its power, calling to her, demanding, hungry. Kael stopped beside her, his face pale. That's it. The wound. Seren couldn't look away. The veil inside her was screaming, straining toward the tear like a moth to flame. Her hands began to glow faintly. If you go down there, Kael said quietly, you're not coming back. Not as yourself. I know. Seren, I know, Kael. She turned to him. But I don't have another choice. There's always another choice. Not for me. Not anymore. Seren looked back at the tear. Ash is coming. The packs are coming. Everyone wants me dead or controlled, and I'm done running. Then fight. But not like this. Not by destroying yourself. I'm not destroying myself. I'm becoming something stronger. You're becoming what they fear, Kael said. And once you cross that line, you can't come back. Seren met his gaze. Good. Let them fear me. Let them all fear me. She started down into the crater. Seren, wait! But she didn't stop. The glass was cold beneath her feet, smooth and slick. Each step echoed across the crater, sharp and lonely. The tear pulsed ahead of her, growing larger with every stride, and the veil inside her surged in response. She was halfway across when she felt it. A presence. Watching. Seren stopped and turned. Ash stood at the far edge of the crater, their form flickering like a candle flame. Their eyes blazed silver. I knew you'd come here, Ash called out. Their voice echoed across the glass. So predictable. Seren's hands clenched. Get out of my way. Or what? You'll fight me? Ash laughed. Look at you. Exhausted. Broken. You can barely stand and you think you can reach the tear before I stop you? I don't think, I know. Then show me. Ash moved. 1 second they were 100 feet away. The next they were right in front of Seren, their hand wrapping around her throat. Seren gasped and clawed at their wrist, but it was like trying to scratch stone. I don't want to kill you, Ash said conversationally, but I will break you, over and over. until there's nothing left but power. A sword burst through Ash's chest. Ash's eyes widened. They looked down at the blade protruding from their sternum, then slowly turned their head. Kael stood behind them, both hands gripping the hilt, his face twisted with fury. "Let her go," he snarled. Ash smiled. How romantic. They released Seren and spun, grabbing the sword and yanking it free. The wound closed instantly, seamlessly, like it had never existed. Kael stumbled backward, his eyes wide. Ash tossed the blade aside. It clattered across the glass, the sound sharp and final. "Did you really think that would work?" Ash asked. Kael didn't answer. He just lunged forward, his fist swinging. Ash caught it effortlessly. Then they twisted. The sound of bone breaking echoed across the crater. Kael screamed, "Kael!" Seren scrambled forward, but roots erupted from the glass, wrapping around her ankles and wrists, pinning her down. Ash dragged Kael closer, examining his broken hand with clinical interest. Brave. Stupid. But brave. "Go to hell," Kael gasped. "Already been there." Ash placed their free hand on Kael's chest. "Let me show you what it's like." Power flooded into Kael. Seren felt it through the veil, felt Ash reaching into his mind, his wolf, tearing through his defenses like tissue paper. She could feel Kael's agony, his terror, his wolf being shredded apart piece by piece. "Stop!" Seren screamed. "Please, I'll do anything." Ash looked at her. "Anything?" "Yes. Just stop hurting him." Ash tilted their head. "You'd surrender? Become my vessel?" "Yes." "You're lying." "I'm not." "Yes, you are." Ash's smile was cold. "I can see it in your eyes. You'd say anything to save him, but the moment I release you, you'd fight me anyway." "Then you know I'll never stop." "I'm counting on it." Ash gestured, and the roots dragged Seren closer to the tear. "You want the raw veil? Fine. Take it. Let it consume you, and when you're hollow and broken and mine, we'll reshape this world together." "No!" But the roots pulled her inexorably toward the light. Seren thrashed, screaming, but they just tightened, cutting into her skin. She could feel the tear behind her, its heat washing over her back, its power pulling at her like gravity. "Kael!" she screamed. Kael pushed himself up on his good hand. His face was white with pain, blood dripping from his mouth, but his eyes were clear. He looked at Seren, then at Ash, then at the tear, and he ran, not toward his sword, toward the tear. "Kael, don't!" Seren screamed, but he was already diving forward, his hand outstretched. His fingers touched the light, and the world exploded. Silver light erupted from the tear like a bomb going off. The shockwave slammed into everything: Seren, Ash, the glass itself. Seren felt herself thrown backward, the roots snapping as she tumbled across the crater floor. She hit the ground hard, the impact driving the air from her lungs. When she looked up, Kael was standing in the center of the light. Or what used to be Kael. His form flickered between human and something else, a shape made of pure radiance, tall and burning bright. His eyes were empty silver voids. His skin glowed like molten metal. And when he moved, reality itself seemed to bend around him. "Impossible," Ash breathed. The light creature turned toward them. "You wanted power?" Its voice was layered, Kael's voice underneath something older, vaster, infinite. "Here I am." Ash's face twisted. "You're not Veilborn. You should be dead." "I am dead." The light pulsed. "And alive. I'm everything. And nothing." It took a step forward. The glass beneath its feet cracked and melted. Ash raised their hands, and roots exploded from the ground, thousands of them, massive and writhing, wrapping around the creature's legs, its arms, its torso. The creature didn't stop. It walked forward, and everywhere the roots touched its skin, they disintegrated into ash. Ash's eyes went wide. "No!" The creature grabbed Ash by the throat and lifted them off the ground. "You wanted to break her," it said, and now the voice was just Kael's, raw and furious and pain-soaked. "Hollow her out. Use her. But you forgot something." Ash clawed at the hand around their neck. "What?" "She's not alone." Light poured from Kael's hand into Ash's body. Ash screamed. It wasn't a sound of pain, it was terror, pure, undiluted terror. The light burned through them, eating away at their form, tearing holes in their essence. They thrashed, kicking, clawing, but Kael's grip didn't loosen. "Seren," Kael gasped. His voice was strained, breaking. "The tear. Go now." Seren pushed herself to her feet. "I can't leave you." "I'm already gone." His form flickered, wavering like a candle in the wind. "I can feel it. The veil. It's burning through me. I can't hold it much longer." "Then let go." "I can't. Not until you're safe." Those terrible silver eyes fixed on her. "Touch the tear. Become what you need to be. I'll buy you time." Tears streamed down Seren's face. "Kael, please, go!" The word cracked like a whip, wrapped in alpha dominance and something deeper, desperation. Seren turned and ran, toward the tear. Behind her, Kael's scream mixed with ashes. The two of them locked together in a blaze of light that turned the entire crater white as the sun. Seren reached the tear. Up close, it was massive, a wound in reality itself, pulsing with terrible, infinite power. She could hear it singing, could feel it pulling at every cell in her body. She looked back once. Kael's form was almost gone, dissolving into pure light, but he was still holding Ash, still keeping them away from her, buying her time, giving her a chance. Seren took a breath, thought of Reese, who'd died protecting her, thought of Kael, who was dying for her right now, thought of every wolf who'd ever looked at her like she was nothing, and she reached into the light. The pain was immediate, absolute, beyond description. The veil poured into her like a river of fire and ice, filling every vein, every nerve, every atom. It burned and froze simultaneously, tearing her apart cell by cell and rebuilding her in the same instant. She couldn't breathe, couldn't scream, couldn't think. Her wolf, the one she'd never had, woke inside her. It howled, raged, died, and was reborn over and over in an endless cycle. She felt every wolf in the world, every heartbeat, every thought, every fear, every moment of pain and joy and rage and love. It was infinite. It was everything. It was too much. A hand grabbed hers. Through the blinding light, through the agony, Seren felt fingers close around hers. Solid, real. She forced her eyes open. Kael was there, inside the light with her. His form was translucent now, fading like mist in sunlight, but his hand was firm. "Don't let go," he said. His voice was quiet, gentle. "Kael." Her voice came out broken. "You're dying." "I know." A sad smile crossed his fading face. "But I'm not letting you do this alone." "Can't?" "I can. And I am." His grip tightened. "You said you wanted to be strong, to matter. So be it. Be everything. Just don't lose yourself in the process." The veil surged again, a tidal wave of power that threatened to shatter her bones. Seren screamed. Kael pulled her close, wrapping his fading arms around her, his dissolving body a shield against the infinite. "I've got you," he whispered against her hair. "I've got you. Just hold on." And slowly, impossibly, the chaos began to settle. The pain didn't fade, but it changed, shifted, became something she could bear. The veil was still there, still vast and endless, but it wasn't tearing her apart anymore. It was flowing into her, merging with her, becoming part of her. Seren gasped and opened her eyes. She could see clearly now. The veil flowed through her like a river through a canyon, massive, powerful, but contained, directed. Hers. Kael's arms were still around her, but his form was barely visible, just an outline, a whisper of light. "You did it," he breathed. Seren looked at him. "You're disappearing." "I know." "Kael, no. It's okay." His hand came up, ghosting over her cheek without quite touching. "I told you. I owed you. This isn't paying a debt." Her voice cracked. "This is me finally doing the right thing." His form flickered. "I should have chosen you from the start. Should have been brave enough to stand with you instead of against you. I'm sorry I wasn't." "Kael, listen to me." His eyes, barely visible now, locked with hers. "You're going to walk out of here with more power than any wolf has ever had. The packs will fear you. They'll try to control you or kill you. Don't let them." "I don't know how to—" "Yes, you do. You're veil-born. You can reshape their instincts, their dominance, their entire hierarchy. So do it. Make them better than we were. Make the world worth living in. Tears streamed down her face. I can't do this without you. You don't need me. You never did. A smile flickered across his fading face. But for what it's worth, I'm glad the moon chose you, even if I was too much of a coward to accept it. His form was almost gone now, just a shimmer in the light. Kael, please. Goodbye, Seren. And then he was gone, dissolved into the light, into the veil, into nothing. Seren stood alone inside the tear, power flooding through her veins, and screamed. The sound tore through the crater, through the forest, through the earth itself. It was rage and grief and loss and power, all mixed together. When the scream finally faded, Seren stepped out of the light. The glass beneath her feet cracked with each step. Her hands glowed silver white, so bright it hurt to look at them. Her eyes blazed with the same terrible light. She had become what Ash had been trying to create. A true Veilborn, powerful beyond measure, and utterly, devastatingly alone. Ash was still there, on their knees in the center of the crater. Kael's attack had torn massive holes in their form. They looked up as Seren approached, and for the first time there was no mockery in their expression, just exhaustion. So, Ash rasped, you survived. Seren stopped in front of them. Yeah. Congratulations. Ash's laugh was bitter. You're a monster now, just like me. Seren looked down at her glowing hands. Maybe. There's no maybe about it. Ash's form flickered. You felt it, didn't you? The veil, all that power, all those lives. You can feel every wolf in the world right now, their thoughts, their fears. You could reach out and crush them all without even trying. I could. Will you? Seren was quiet for a long moment. Then she knelt down, bringing herself level with Ash. You spent 100 years alone, she said quietly, hollowed out, searching for someone to understand, for connection, for purpose. Ash's eyes narrowed. What's your point? My point is, Seren placed her hand on Ash's chest. You were never a monster. You were just lost. Ash jerked back. What are you doing? Giving you what you've been searching for. Seren's power flowed out of her, but not to destroy, to heal. She poured the veil into Ash, into the hollow spaces, the torn edges, the century of loneliness. She filled the gaps, mended the tears, gave back what the raw veil had taken. Ash gasped. Their forms stopped flickering, solidified. For the first time in 100 years, they felt whole. Tears streamed down their face. Why? Because someone has to break the cycle. Seren stood. You wanted to use me, to make me into a weapon, but I'm choosing something different. What? To be better than what came before. Ash stared up at her, their face crumpling with emotions they hadn't felt in decades. Seren turned away. The crater was silent now, empty. The armies had long since retreated. Kael was gone, and Seren stood alone, the most powerful being in the world. She closed her eyes and felt the vast network of the veil spread out around her, every pack, every wolf, every beating heart. She could feel their fear, their hatred, their plans to destroy her, and she made a decision. She raised her hands toward the sky and began to reshape everything. Seren raised her hands toward the sky and let the veil pour out of her, not as a weapon, as a tide. It spread across the world in waves, invisible, irresistible, touching every wolf from the northern territories to the southern coast. She felt them all jolt in unison, felt their minds open to her whether they wanted it or not. And she spoke, not with words, with feeling. She showed them what she'd seen, the lake swallowing the island, Reese disappearing beneath black water, Kael dissolving into light, his last moments spent protecting someone he'd once thrown away. She showed them the rejection ceremony, the years of contempt, the night she'd spent freezing and starving in the wilderness. She showed them what it meant to be powerless in a world built on dominance. And then she showed them something else. A choice. The veil inside every wolf began to shift, responding to her will. She could feel the hierarchies, the rigid structures of alpha and beta and omega, starting to crack. Not breaking, just loosening, becoming flexible where they'd been iron. She gave them the ability to choose, To resist their alphas if those alphas were cruel, to question orders that felt wrong, to build bonds based on respect instead of fear. It wasn't mind control. She wasn't forcing them to be good. She was just removing the chains that made it impossible to be anything else. The world shuddered, and Seren felt the backlash. Every alpha in every territory suddenly realized what she'd done, felt their grip on their packs loosening, felt their wolves looking at them with new eyes, questioning, evaluating, no longer blindly obedient. The rage came like a tidal wave. Hundreds of alphas, their dominance challenged, their authority threatened, all turning their fury toward one target. Her. Seren opened her eyes. The crater was no longer empty. They'd come, not just the armies from before, all of them, every pack, every alpha, thousands of wolves surrounding the crater in a living wall, their eyes glowing in the dim light, their weapons drawn. And at the front, standing together for the first time in decades, were the 12 alphas from the summit. Voss of Blackmore stepped forward. His voice boomed across the crater. Seren Vale, you have violated the natural order, corrupted the bonds that hold our world together. For this crime, there is only one sentence. Death, the other alphas chorused. Seren looked at them, at the thousands of wolves ready to tear her apart, at Ash still kneeling behind her, watching with hollow eyes. She could kill them all, right now. One thought, one push of the veil, and every wolf on that ridge would drop dead. It would be easy. But Kael's voice echoed in her mind. Make them better than we were. Seren took a breath and stepped forward. You're right, she called out. The wolves stirred, confused. Voss's eyes narrowed. What? I violated your order, corrupted your bonds. I changed the rules without asking permission. Seren's voice carried across the crater, clear and steady. And I'd do it again. Voss snarled. Then you admit you're a threat. I admit I'm a threat to you, to every alpha who's built their power on fear and cruelty. But I'm not a threat to them. Seren gestured toward the mass of wolves, to the ones you've been controlling, dominating, breaking. We maintain order, Alpha Kara of Silverpine snapped. Without dominance, there is chaos. Without choice, there's slavery. Seren's eyes blazed. You call it order, but it's just a pretty word for oppression, and I'm done pretending it's anything else. You're one wolf, Voss said, against thousands. You think your power makes you untouchable? No, I think my power makes me responsible. Seren looked out at the armies. So I'm giving you all a choice, the same choice I gave the rest of the world. She raised her hands. The veil pulsed, and every wolf on that ridge felt it, the offer, the option. They could attack her, follow their alpha's orders, try to kill her, or they could walk away. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, in the back ranks, a single wolf lowered his weapon, then another, then 10 more, then 100. They didn't run, didn't retreat, just stopped. Stood there, weapons down, and waited to see what would happen. Voss's face went purple. What are you doing? I gave you an order. The wolves didn't move. I said, attack. Nothing. Kara turned on her own pack. This is treason, mutiny. One of her betas, a scarred woman with gray hair, met her gaze. No, Alpha, this is choice. The word rippled through the crowd. Choice. Voss spun toward Seren, his eyes wild. You did this. You broke them. I freed them, Seren said quietly. There's a difference. There is no difference. Voss shifted, his form expanding, bones cracking as his wolf surged to the surface. You've destroyed everything we built. Good. It needed destroying. Voss roared and charged. He came down the crater slope like an avalanche, massive and unstoppable, his claws tearing through the glass. The other alphas followed. Not all of them, but enough. 8 against 1. Seren didn't move. She just reached out. The veil wrapped around them, slipping into their minds, their wolves, the core of their dominance. She didn't crush them, didn't break them. She just showed them. Showed them every wolf they'd hurt, every order they'd given that crushed someone's spirit, every moment they'd chosen power over compassion. Voss stumbled mid-charge, his eyes going wide. He crashed to the ground and skidded across the glass, coming to a stop at Seren's feet. The others collapsed around him, not unconscious, not hurt, just overwhelmed. Seren knelt beside Voss. You wanted to know if my power makes me untouchable? It doesn't, but it makes me see clearly. And what I see is a world that's been breaking people for generations because you were all too afraid to change. Voss looked up at her. Tears streamed down his face. Actual tears, from a man who probably hadn't cried in decades. What did you do to me? He whispered. Made you feel what they feel. Every wolf you've dominated, every life you've crushed under your authority. Seren stood. That's what the veil does. It doesn't lie. It doesn't let you hide from the truth. She turned to address the armies. I'm not your enemy, she called out. I'm just tired of watching people suffer because someone decided suffering was the price of order. So here's what's going to happen. You can keep your packs, keep your alphas, keep your territories. But the rules change. From now on, dominance is earned through respect, not fear. Bonds are chosen, not forced. And anyone who tries to go back to the old ways, she let the veil flare just for a second. Every wolf on the ridge flinched. Will answer to me. Silence. Then, slowly, one wolf in the crowd dropped to one knee, then another, then hundreds. Not in submission, in acknowledgement. They weren't bowing to her dominance. They were accepting the new reality. Seren exhaled slowly. It was done. The armies dispersed over the next few hours. The alphas who'd attacked her got to their feet eventually, shaken but whole. Most of them left without a word, their faces pale, their eyes haunted. A few stayed behind, asking questions Seren didn't have answers for yet. How would this work? What happened to wolves who refused to change? What was her role now? I don't know, Seren told them honestly. I'm not trying to rule you. I'm just trying to make sure you can't rule each other the way you used to. It wasn't a satisfying answer, but it was the truth. By sunset, the crater was empty again except for Seren and Ash. Ash had stood up at some point, their form solid now, stable. They looked different, younger, somehow, more human. You really did it, Ash said quietly. Seren turned to them. Did what? Broke the system, changed everything. Ash's smile was sad. I spent 100 years trying to tear down the packs through fear, and you did it in a day through... what? Compassion? I wouldn't call it compassion, more like exhaustion. Seren sat down on the glass. I'm just tired of fighting. Ash sat beside her. What will you do now? I don't know. Walk away, maybe. Let them figure it out themselves. You can't. They'll look to you whether you want them to or not. Then I'll disappoint them. Seren looked at her hands. They'd stopped glowing, but she could still feel the veil humming beneath her skin. I never wanted to be a leader. I just wanted to survive. And now that you have? Seren was quiet for a long time. Now I have to figure out what comes after survival. Ash nodded. For what it's worth, thank you for what you did. Healing me. I didn't deserve it. No one deserves anything. We just get what we get and try to make the best of it. Seren stood. What about you? What will you do? Ash looked out at the darkening sky. I think I'll wander for a while. See what the world looks like now that I'm not trying to destroy it. And if the packs come after you? They won't. Not while you're watching. Ash glanced at her. Will you be watching? Someone has to, Ash smiled. Then I suppose I'll behave. They stood and walked to the edge of the crater. At the rim, they paused and looked back. The world's different because of you, Serene Veil. Try not to forget that when things get hard. Then they were gone, disappearing into the trees. Seren stood alone in the crater, surrounded by cracked glass and fading light. She closed her eyes and reached out through the veil, feeling the vast network of wolves spreading across the world. She could feel their confusion, their fear, their hope. Could feel the old structures crumbling and new ones starting to form. It would take time, generations maybe. But it had started. And she had started it. Seren opened her eyes and looked at the tear, the wound in reality, where the raw veil still pulsed and writhed. It called to her, tempting her to dive back in, to take more power, to become something even greater. She turned away from it. Some wounds were meant to stay open. Some power was meant to remain untouched. She'd taken enough. Seren walked out of the crater and into the forest. She didn't know where she was going, didn't have a plan. But for the first time in her life, she was walking forward by choice, not running from something, not chasing power, just walking, and that felt like enough. For sight. 3 months later, Saren stood on a cliff overlooking the ocean. She'd traveled south, away from the territories, away from the packs. She'd found a small coastal town where no one knew her name, where wolves and humans lived side by side without the rigid hierarchies that defined pack life. It was quiet here, peaceful. She'd rented a small cabin on the edge of town and spent her days walking the beach, collecting shells, watching the waves. At night, she'd reach out through the veil and check on the packs, making sure the new order was holding, making sure no one was trying to slide back into the old ways. There were problems, alphas who resisted, wolves who couldn't adapt, conflicts that erupted when the old power structures collapsed. But there were also moments of hope. Packs choosing their leaders based on wisdom instead of strength. Bonds forming between wolves who'd never have been allowed to connect under the old rules. Omega speaking up, being heard. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. Saren heard footsteps behind her. She turned, her hand instinctively going to the knife at her belt. A woman stood at the edge of the tree line, tall, broad-shouldered, with short silver hair and a familiar scar running down her left cheek. Saren's breath caught. "Reese?" the woman grinned. "Miss me?" Saren crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and grabbed Reese in a crushing hug. "You're alive. How I saw you. The island." "Yeah, that was a close one." Reese pulled back, wincing slightly. "Turns out I'm a better swimmer than I thought. Got pulled downstream. Woke up on a riverbank 3 days later, feeling like I'd been run over by a herd of elephants." "Why didn't you come find me?" "I tried, but you'd already gone to the wound. By the time I tracked you down, you'd already done your whole reshape the world thing." Reese's expression sobered. "I heard about Kyle. I'm sorry." Saren looked away. He made his choice. "Still sucks." "Yeah, it does." They stood in silence for a moment, the ocean wind whipping around them. Then Reese said, "So, what now? You planning to hide out here forever?" "I'm not hiding. I'm resting." "Sure. And I'm a ballet dancer." Reese crossed her arms. "You changed the entire world, Saren. You can't just walk away from that. Watch me. The packs need you. The packs need to learn to stand on their own." Saren turned back to the ocean. "I gave them the tools. What they do with them is up to them." Reese was quiet for a moment. Then, "You sound like him." "Who?" "Kyle. That's exactly the kind of thing he would have said." Saren's chest tightened. "Don't. I'm just saying, don't compare me to him. I'm nothing like him. You're exactly like him. You're both stubborn assholes who'd rather carry the weight of the world alone than ask for help." Reese stepped closer. "But here's the thing. You don't have to be alone anymore." Saren looked at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to." Reese's expression softened. "You saved my life more than once. Let me return the favor." Saren felt something crack inside her chest. "I don't need saving. Everyone needs saving sometimes, even you." Saren looked away, blinking against the sudden burn in her eyes. "I'm tired, Reese. I'm so fucking tired." "I know. I don't know how to do this, how to be whatever I am now." "Then figure it out, but don't do it alone." Reese put a hand on her shoulder. "You've got people who care about you. Use them." Saren closed her eyes. She could feel the veil humming inside her, vast and endless. Could feel the weight of all those wolves looking to her for guidance. But she could also feel Reese's hand on her shoulder. Solid, real, present. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay?" "Yeah, okay, you can stay." Reese grinned. "Knew you'd see it my way." They stood there for a while, watching the sun sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Then Saren said, "There's something I need to do." "What?" "I need to go back. To the territories. There's someone I need to see." The Thorn Ridge pack house looked the same as it always had. Massive stone walls, high windows, smoke curling from the chimneys. Saren stood at the edge of the tree line, staring at it, her heart pounding. She hadn't been back here since the night of the rejection, hadn't wanted to be. But there was unfinished business, and she couldn't move forward until she dealt with it. Reese stood beside her. You sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. They walked together through the gates. The wolves on guard duty recognized her immediately. Their eyes went wide. One of them dropped his weapon. Veilborn, he whispered. Just Seren, she said. Is Elder Miriam still here? In the council hall. Seren nodded and kept walking. The pack house was busy, wolves moving through the corridors, talking, laughing, living their lives. But as Seren passed, they went quiet. Some bowed. Others just stared. Word of what she'd done had spread. Everyone knew her name now. Seren found Elder Miriam in the council hall, bent over a stack of papers. The old woman looked up as Seren entered, and her face went pale. You, she breathed. Me. Seren stepped into the room. We need to talk. Miriam stood slowly, her hands shaking. I heard what you did. The changes. You rejected me, Seren interrupted. You stood there and watched Kael carve his claws into my wrist, and you said nothing. Miriam's jaw clenched. I was following protocol. Protocol. Seren laughed bitterly. That's your excuse? You watched him destroy me because of protocol? You were wolfless, weak. The pack was wrong. Seren stepped closer. And you were wrong. And every single wolf who stood there and watched was wrong. Miriam looked away. What do you want from me? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. Is that what you came here for? No. Seren's voice was quiet. I came here to tell you that I forgive you. Miriam's head snapped up. What? I forgive you. And Kael. And everyone else who hurt me. Seren took a breath. Not because you deserve it, but because I'm tired of carrying the weight of what you did. So I'm putting it down. Miriam stared at her, her eyes glistening. I don't know if that means anything to you, Seren continued, but it means something to me. So there it is. You're forgiven. She turned to leave. Wait, Miriam called out. Seren stopped but didn't turn around. He loved you, Miriam said quietly. Kael, at the end. He came to me before he left for the wound, told me to take care of the pack if he didn't come back, and he said, her voice broke. He said he finally understood what the moon had been trying to tell him. Seren's throat tightened. And what was that? That strength isn't about dominance, it's about sacrifice. Seren closed her eyes. Yeah, he figured that out. She walked out of the council hall and didn't look back. They buried Kael 3 days later. There was no body. He'd dissolved into the veil, become part of the energy that flowed through everything. But the pack insisted on a ceremony anyway. Seren stood at the edge of the gathering, watching as wolves she'd never met spoke about a man she'd barely known. They talked about his strength, his leadership, his dedication to the pack. No one mentioned the rejection. No one mentioned what he'd done to her. It was like that night had never happened. Seren felt Reese come up beside her. You okay? I don't know, Seren said honestly. Part of me wants to scream at all of them, tell them who he really was, what he did. But another part of me knows it doesn't matter. He's gone, and whatever mistakes he made, he tried to fix them at the end. Does that make it okay? No, but it makes it human. The ceremony ended. Wolves began to disperse, moving back to their daily lives. Seren walked to the small marker they'd placed in the pack cemetery, a simple stone with Kael's name carved into it. She knelt beside it. I don't know if you can hear me, she said quietly. Wherever you are, whatever you've become, but I need you to know something. The wind picked up, rustling through the trees. I forgive you too, for the rejection, for the exile, for everything. Seren placed her hand on the stone. Not because you earned it, but because I can't move forward if I'm still holding on to the past. She paused. And I need you to know what you did at the wound, giving me time, protecting me. That meant something. It doesn't erase what came before, but it means something. The veil hummed inside her, and for just a moment, just a breath, she felt something, a warmth, a presence. Not Kael, not exactly, but a piece of him, woven into the veil, lingering.
I'm sorry, it seemed to whisper. I'm so sorry. Seren closed her eyes. I know. The presence faded. Seren stood and walked away from the grave. Reese was waiting at the edge of the cemetery. Feel better? A little? Seren looked back at the stone one last time.
He was complicated. Most people are.
Yeah, they are.
They walked together through the pack grounds, past wolves who bowed and whispered and stared. What now? Reese asked. Seren looked out at the horizon, where the sun was beginning to set. Now we go home. Back to the coast. Back to the quiet. And then? And then we see what comes next. 6 months later. Serene stood on the same cliff, watching the same ocean, but everything was different. Word had spread about the coastal town, about the place where the Veilborn lived, where wolves could come and be heard without fear of dominance crushing them. It had become a refuge, a sanctuary. Wolves arrived every week. Some stayed. Some just visited and moved on. But they all came looking for the same thing: hope. Seren had never meant to build a community, but somehow that's what had happened. Reese helped. She'd taken on the role of mediator, helping new arrivals adjust, settling disputes, keeping the peace. She was good at it, better than Seren was. There were others too. Wolves who'd left their packs, who'd chosen freedom over hierarchy. They'd built homes, started families, created something new. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still wolves who struggled with the lack of structure, but it was theirs. Seren heard footsteps and turned. A young wolf, maybe 17, skinny and nervous, stood at the edge of the clearing. "You're the Veilborn," he said. "Just Seren." I came from Silverpine. My alpha said I was too weak, that I'd never amount to anything." His voice shook. "Is it true you can change people? Make them stronger?" Seren looked at him, saw herself in his eyes. The fear, the desperation. "I can't make you stronger," she said gently, "but I can give you the space to become strong on your own terms." The boy blinked. "I don't understand." "You will." Seren gestured toward the town. "Go find Reese, she'll get you settled, and tomorrow we'll talk about what strength really means." The boy nodded and hurried off. Seren turned back to the ocean. She could feel the veil spreading across the world, could feel the changes taking root. It would be slow. There would be setbacks, but the old ways were dying, and something new was being born. Reese came up beside her. "Another one?" "Yeah." "We're running out of space." "Then we'll build more." Reese smiled. "You know, when I first met you, you were half dead in the wilderness. Never thought you'd end up building a whole new world." "Neither did I." "Regret it?" Seren thought about Kael, about Ash, about every moment of pain that had led her here. "No," she said finally. "I don't regret it. It hurt like hell, but I don't regret it." "Good," Reese bumped her shoulder. "Because you're stuck with it now." They stood together on the cliff, watching the sun paint the sky in impossible colors. And Seren realized something. She wasn't alone anymore. She had Reese. She had the community they'd built. She had wolves looking to her not for dominance, but for guidance. She had purpose. Not the one she'd chosen, but the one she'd earned. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of salt and pine and possibility. And Seren smiled. For the first time in her life, when she looked toward the future, she didn't see fear. She saw hope. Endose wasati. The story of Seren Veil, the rejected Omega who became the most powerful Veilborn in history, would be told for generations. Some would call her a hero, others a tyrant. Most would simply call her the woman who changed everything. But Seren herself didn't care about titles. She cared about the young wolves who came to her sanctuary and found safety. She cared about the pack slowly learning to choose leaders based on wisdom instead of force. She cared about the world she and Kael and Reese and even Ash had helped create, messy and imperfect and struggling, but free. The rejection scar on her wrist had faded over time. It was still there, a thin silver line, but it didn't burn anymore. It was just a reminder of where she'd been, of what she'd survived, of the price of power and the cost of change. And on quiet nights, when Seren reached out through the veil and felt the vast network of wolves across the world, she sometimes felt that presence again, that warmth, that piece of Kael woven into the fabric of everything. She never spoke to it, never acknowledged it, but she felt it. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was forgiveness. Maybe that was peace. The moon rose over the ocean, full and bright, and Seren stood beneath it, no longer powerless, no longer broken, no longer afraid, just herself. Veil-born, free, and finally home.